we're going to say something interesting, and
Well,
normally,
but
normally something interesting doesn't happen when we're talking.
No,
so tell me about what your camera are you two talking about?
That's the RunCam split 4K hybrid. I don't know why they give them such long names, but yeah, my observation. I'm going to do another follow-up video, of course, but because the HD optics are so small, you have a lot of compromises. And the big thing I've seen with the 4K camera from Hawkeye and this one is the IR filter is producing a lot of reflections inside the camera. You're getting a lot of color banding, like stripes of red, where the IR filter is actually bouncing light around inside the camera. You're getting refraction from the edge of that IR filter, and it really does mess up the image quite a bit, which is a shame.
It's a weird setup, isn't it? Because obviously they're trying to get people to dump their GoPros, in all essence, isn't it?
There's a new GoPro. Have you got your GoPro
we can come on to that in a minute, yeah. And they're trying to say, this will do the all-in-one, bit like the DJI system does, a bit like Frost might do, but at the end of the day, the guys who really want good footage are gonna want a proper camera on there at the end of the day. There's nothing to replace a proper GoPro fully, is there, at the end of the day?
Yeah, well, then mind you, I think it depends. I like to get HD footage of my flights. Most of it never goes up on YouTube, and I just like to relive the flight afterwards and look at what I've done wrong and see if I can go back later and find where the pieces went. But if I want to get really good cinematic footage, I will use something like a GoPro. But for 90% of my flying, that little cheapy HD camera like a split or this new hybrid split, it's perfectly adequate. And if you look at the DJI system, the camera on that also is nowhere near as good as a GoPro. But people aren't using.
It's enough, isn't it? Yeah. It's a nice camera. I did like the flexi cable as well, much better than you've seen on the other ones as well. As you say, it's a tidier. It probably would hold up all right into a tree. I'd probably find out pretty quick because normally trees tend to attract to me very quickly with my small drones. Magnetic trees. Funny enough, you mentioned, has everyone seen the new GoPro today? What do you think of that?
What new GoPro? Jonty and James, good day. We started early because they were saying something interesting. So we started. So we are live.
Like James has left the room.
James, yeah. Well, no. James isn't James the right or left hand light? He's one of the. No, I thought he was a lampshade.
He's a thing moving
around. I've been shopping. I went. We only had light bulbs hanging down from the ceiling, and I thought it was about time after living here for about 18 months that we've got some lampshades. So I've been splashing out.
It's you living on the edge, buying lampshades.
You must be making a fortune.
Yeah, that's right. You're sticking the money in. You can buy lampshades. Exactly.
See, it's true consultancy nowadays.
So have you missed the GoPro as well, Gary? Have you missed that as well?
Look. Cards on the table, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. I may have been in the pub until very recently. And the main reason I've been doing that is to ensure that we get our weird little village. The village which I live near is about 20 kilometers away. And we're then about 120 kilometers away from a big town. But for some weird reason, we may be getting 5G here, which is ridiculous. Because we're just farmers in the middle of nowhere. So that's coming. So I was there making the case. I said, my friend Bruce in New Zealand, I've got to speak to him in a higher definition. And they said, okay, that's what they said. And that involved being in the pub. So that's where I've been. So I have.
You told me you were going to be in a meeting. You said it was a really important meeting you were attending.
Yeah, well, now you know my secret code for a really important meeting. So yes, that was a really important meeting. So, all right, tell me about this GoPro that I appear to have missed whilst I was in the pub.
New Hero 8 has arrived. It's very much the Hero 7, but with a lot of accessories, really. They've updated the stabilization. They're calling it, I can't remember what they call theirs. Hypersmooth. Is it Hypersmooth?
Hypersmooth.
Hypersmooth 2. Similar size sensor. Interesting is the accessories. They're trying to push this as a vlogging camera. That seems to be the big thing. And they've got this new external housing with a microphone built in and HDMI ports and everything. And then you can bolt on a screen. There's an accessory screen you can put on, and they're saying it's going to be the next best thing since vlogging. However,
isn't it a flippy screen? Isn't the screen a flippy screen?
Yeah, it's flippy, but it's not part of the camera. It's the accessories.
So you have to buy it extra.
You buy it extra. Now, they are in the UK 80 quid each. So I've worked out the GoPro with the camera and the housing is 540 quid, which is good standard camera money. You know, you're going to get a decent vlogging camera for that. Camera. Yeah, proper. Yeah. If you're into your vlogging, you're going to get a good.
That's going to do an awful lot for sales of the Osmo.
Yeah. It's big money. It's big money. It looks tidy. Okay. I don't think you can ever question GoPro's quality is outstanding, and there's a lot of other stuff they've bundled in there as well. They said they've tuned the way it records and everything. But that's a lot of coin for a vlogging camera. 550 quid is.
So you're never gonna. Well, Bruce can correct me here, but you're never going to match, a bigger lens and bigger sensor and all that sort of thing. However much it is and however GoPro it is, but I'm sure Sony or what's the other lot? They probably have something very equivalent, don't they?
There's a big shootout in the vlogging camera market at the moment. Actually, every man and his dog's producing these small mirrorless cameras with a view to catching vloggers. And they've all got these super good features and things. A lot of vloggers using the Sony. And Sony actually brought out a new version of an older camera, which is smaller and lighter and everything. But it's most vloggers just use what they've got, to be honest.
Yeah, Sony 6400. I bought one 2 weeks ago. It's useless as a vlogging camera.
Well, here's a review you can trust.
Absolutely. There we are. Right, flip up screen.
That was pretty review, wasn't it?
Useless.
Couldn't keep up with that.
Useless. Yeah, absolutely. I got a GH5. It's a great camera. Screen is a complete waste of time. I got a GH5 as well. Knocks the spots off it.
Well, the GH5 is what?
Panasonic.
Panasonic.
Yeah. Okay.
It has an articulating screen, so I can tell it to go where I want it to.
It's the Panasonic Reach Around, it's called.
Oh, there we go. And the demonetization begins.
But yeah, okay, that is at the top end of the price scale. You're gonna the body on that's about 900 quid, so you're not going to spend that much. But a Sony 6000 is 480 quid in the UK with a cheap lens, 510, 520. You can have an APS-C 4 megapixel decent camera for the same money as that GoPro. I suppose they've got to put the prices up.
I can't find it. I can't find a camera near me to do that. But what I do know I need to do is, oh God, it's still a minute till we start. But I know that one person here is short on time, and that person is Jonty. So we go to Jonty first but Jonty might want to hear about the kind of a little bit of a victory for registration or anti-registration, if you will, that James has helped. Let's do that first. So James, tell us secrets. Tell us what you know. Tell us two things. Your trousers. No. How did it go with the meeting about the AirProx guys? Well, let's do that second because Jonty's got a little bit of time. But tell us about registration being delayed. I think you know secrets.
Yeah, so I literally got out of hospital yesterday after the AirProx event. It was I'm joking. It went really well actually. It kind of, I think it opened everyone's eyes actually to the difficulty of actually how it is to categorize these things, because there's two sides to this equation, and I think both sides have kind of agree with each other, but it's like, what do you actually do? What can you actually put down? Does the AirProx board turn around and say, oh well, every pilot out there is lying, and then basically just annoy the whole commercial aviation industry? Or do they say, well, some of these might not be, but what can they say? At the moment, they're reporting that alleged drone blah 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 blah. So they're not saying that it definitely was a drone, but they're saying that, you know, they can only assume it was based on the report, which is all they've got to go on. And I think everyone could kind of see the predicament that the Air Prox board are in. But what's come out of it is all sides seem happy to be working with each other. All sides want to look at ways how it can be improved. And so the next steps is I've been talking to Simon Dale from FPV UK and Air Prox Reality Check. We're also speaking to Steve Forward, and we're looking at a way on how the publication can be changed to better reflect the truth. Because one thing that we kind of concluded from all of this is, you know, what do we do? Well, firstly, we can improve the pilot report. So one of our committee members, Alex, he's working with Balpa to see if we can change the options that you have on the form. So when a pilot sees a drone or thinks they see a drone, they have to fill out this form. Well, the forms that they get have 3 options on them. It's either an aircraft, it's a bird, or it's a drone. Now, there are lots of other things that could potentially be seen, and there's not an option to say, I don't know what it was, I saw something. So what we want to do is try and improve that form, because that might then weed out a few of the unknowns from that equation, and also try and see if we can include some extra information, such as, you know, how sure are you that it was what you think it was, and some other potential questions which can help the Air Prox board make a determination as to whether they should classify it as an unknown object or as a drone. One thing which was quite interesting is Steve Ford in his presentation did a graph of the UK, a picture of the UK with all of the Air Proxes color coded all over it. And one thing which was really interesting is actually what we saw was between 2018 and 2019, there's been a huge change, and actually there's a lot more reports being classified as unknown objects. So we're already seeing a bit of a shift towards things that are a little bit sort of 50-50 being classified as unknown objects. So we're moving in the right direction, and it's just a case of saying, you know, us putting in our knowledge as a drone community to say, well, look, okay, the highest altitudes these drones can get to is 13,000 feet or 11,000 feet, whatever it is. And then we can automatically say, well, anything above that, we can pretty much classify as an unknown object. We can also look at how they're published. We did sort of have a discussion around the idea of whether we could bring some probabilistic information into that. So instead of saying either it was a drone or it was an unknown object, having some form of saying, okay, we think there's a 60% chance it was a drone or a 10% chance it was a drone. But when you start getting into the detail on that, you might as well roll a dice or flip a coin. Like, you know, you're basically trusting what the pilot says and what the pilot writes down and the information that they give out. You're none the wiser to actually know whether or not it was a drone at all. So, you know, I think we kind of, well, personally, I can say that I think that angle is a little bit spurious, but certainly, you know, the pilot reporting form and the way that that's presented to the media and to the general public, those two things can be improved. And I think overall, it's that publication which is the most important aspect, because what's doing the damage isn't necessarily that the people within the industry see this information. It's people outside the industry who, such as you know, reporters who pick up this information and then put out, you know, a big front page news story of, you know, drone almost kills 300 people on their flight to Ibiza or something. And that kind of information is what does the real harm. So if we can kind of, I suppose, you know, unarm these people, unarm the reporters, and not give them the kind of ammunition they need to be able to create a story, then I think we've actually achieved the purpose. And so that's really where I think we're trying to focus our efforts is trying to get some factual information out there to say, well, okay, this has been reported as a drone, but it's not verified. We've got no other data to verify this claim. That may just de-escalate some of these reports and some of these media stories that get propagated.
And here we are in the very week that the Gatwick job's been said, I don't know, whatever. We don't think they were there. So, yeah, well done, James. Well done, AR Paz. It's been a very positive story all the way through having this meeting. And again, as ever, we're the wrong group. You are preaching to the converted. Well, I don't know. Does anyone else want to say anything while I'm ranting on?
But just to pick up one last point, we do actually have a press release going out soon. So we've just been trying to work out exactly what kind of information we think is best to go out to the wider community. And to be honest, if I'm being completely honest, the last week I've been absolutely inundated with work. So it's been a bit tricky trying to get this round people and try and bring in all the different viewpoints. But what we're going to be doing is hopefully get that out by the end of the week. And we have one of the big mainstream newspapers wanting to run with it. So we'll.
Would that be the one that begins with T and has IMES in it?
It could well be, yeah, potentially.
Oh, yeah,
okay,
yeah. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, that's it. That's right. Yeah,
Starts with the.
So, but, all right. So,
it's about time.
I've got this extendable whip antenna in my hand. What is the problem with the messaging then? What's the nuance you need? I don't quite understand that.
What do you mean? Sorry. So,
well, you obviously you're trying to work out how to get out the message of what happened in that meeting, which for us as a community is very positive. But how are you trying to? What are you worried about saying to the general public that you think the message will get lost?
It's nothing about being worried. It's just a case of drafting it, sending it across to others to add their points and perspectives on it, and then getting it out there. So, to be honest, a lot of it has been the fact that the people who are doing this are volunteers, such as myself, and this place here, I have to pay for it to be able to put a roof over my head. And if I was being paid full time to do this full time, then it would have probably been out by now. But I've only got so many. Last week I had to put 2 days in for RPAS, voluntarily to help chair an event up in Lancaster. It's about 4.5 hour drive from where I am, there and back again. And then we had a West Midlands meet, which was like a mapping challenge, which we went to. So that was another day out of my diary. And these things drag out. We've got a draft out there, so I just need to make some edits, and then hopefully we'll get that out sort of in the next couple of days.
Well, fair play. And I think also, but I don't mean to underemphasize how impressed I am with that, but also the other thing you've been involved with is, and a lot of people have been involved with the slowing down of the registration process in the UK. And well done to you all. Your voice was heard. What do you think was is there a single thing that made the voice heard, or did common sense prevail?
So I think it was a lot of pressure from different groups. I think BMFA had a big hand in it. So I don't want to take away any of their glory. I think our CEO Graham also put a lot of pressure on them as well. And I dare say Simon Dale, although he wasn't involved in the meeting, I dare say his efforts were also in there as well. So I think it's good that we need to come together as different communities. We've all got slightly different objectives, but for something like this, I think largely we all agree. So I think it was pressure from lots of different groups all together, and then we had a change in the Secretary of State for Transport, and he came in and really shook things up. So they had a meeting. It was Graham Brown from RPAS, I forget the guy's name from BMFA. You might have to remind me. But the CEO of BMFA, and then it was Grant Shapps, who's the new transport guy, MP, and then CAA and DFT representation. And they had a meeting. And I don't really want to lay into them too much, but I don't want to give away too much information. But they, Grant Shapps looked at the information and basically come to the conclusion that it needed further investigation and more consultation was needed to ensure that we were doing the right thing. So that's probably as much as I can say, but it's great to see that there's basically a move in the right direction. It looks like the price is going to come down. Not massively, but it looks like it's going to be single-digit numbers rather than double-digit numbers, which is an improvement. I think we've still got a problem with the structure of the thing. I still don't like the fact that they've made it so complicated by having a remote pilot and an operator, and then why they couldn't just say you have remote pilots and you have companies, and the remote pilot is responsible for their own flights unless they're part of a company, which is then responsible for their flights. Because what would happen then is you would have a situation where if a 13-year-old wanted to fly their remote control aircraft, although they're responsible, their responsibility then lies with the parent. But at the moment, it's the parent who has to sign up and become an operator to be able to do that. And so I do really worry, it's probably not RPAS's sort of game, the whole 13-year-olds, but in the long term, it's these people who are flying models from an early age who are going to become future drone pilots and be operating commercially. So it is going to
better ones. I'll vouch there'll be better ones as well.
Yeah.
I'd rather take some youngster that's flown from the age of 10 to 18 or whatever the legal requirement is, and they'll be far better than somebody that walks in with a shiny qualification from buying a Phantom down in a high street store. They'll be far better.
Exactly. So I do worry a little bit about that. Like they have allowed for the fact that parents can register as an operator themselves and take legal responsibility. But if a child buys a bicycle and knocks an old lady off her feet, then who's the police officer going to come to? The police officer is going to be knocking on the parent's door to say, look, your child has done this. They've injured an elderly lady. You need to maybe have a word with your son.
I feel like this is coming from experience. But anyway,
the thing is, I don't get. There's no need for that. That bit, and I agree with James in what he said. The annoyance is you don't make a parent sign for a child when he's riding a bike or anything like that. The natural evolution is the parent's responsible for the child. I don't see why they had to go down this whole route.
Encode it.
Yeah, it's bizarre. It's a weird one.
It's not too bizarre because it's written into EASA regulation.
But isn't that because of the CAA? Isn't it because of the CAA regulations and taking from their operator license and the commercial, and they're just trying to take it into the non-commercial space? I mean, it sounds like they're still learning how best to moderate and legislate all of this.
Yeah, the problem is it was ridiculously complicated. The problem is I've got to be careful. There might be an NDA involved somewhere, so I've got to be a little bit careful. So I don't know how much of this thing is leaked or not. So,
what you mean the questions?
No, the question. That's all out there.
Anyway,
yeah. That's all out there. But it's interesting. So I was ready to eat my shirt before this changed. However, it has changed, and James hit the one point. We've had a change in minister. That's the key. If it was Graylin, this would be going ahead, steamroller. We'd have nothing to stop it. It's positive. I still think every commercial operator will have to register. I don't think we're going to get away with that one. I think they'll just make it. I think it's too complex for them to do it any other way now. I don't think they can deal with it any other way.
What I'm finding, sorry, but I'm finding it extraordinary is that people today, on the day that it should have happened,
Yes.
are saying, I'm a commercial operator. Does this apply to me?
Yeah.
They've not thought about it. at all.
No.
At all.
Well,
even though it should be rolling it.
What's the most stupid thing about this is you've got someone who goes through, an NQE course who has
Exactly.
to
That's
sit
what
down.
people I'm talking about.
They
Yeah.
have to sit down for 2 days, learn about air law, meteorology, airspace, different types of airspace, and then they log on, do the 20 questions of if Sally is next to a rock concert, and you're kind of like, well, like I've just done this. But I've done it.
You get to argue then that you don't like the answers they're telling you, because you then turn around and say that's not right. That's not the safest thing to do, because that's what I ended up doing.
Yeah. Well, this is the problem. Is if you've already been through and got your certificate of competency, surely you shouldn't have to go and do the 20 questions. That's just that's like doing a driving license and then them giving you a questionnaire. If you want to go, if you want to go and when you purchase your car, it's like, well, I've just done my driving license. What are you doing? So yeah, it seems a bit stupid, but I think
it doesn't follow normal aviation convention, does it? Where you would start with your private pilot's license, your commercial pilot's license, and then your ATPL if you're going to be an airline driver. It should have NQE. Well, I suppose there has to be a little bit of overlap where people are already commercially qualified and they should be let through. But until then, you start with this, and this, and it's a natural progression of learning and training, which I would argue with the BMFA at the very basic level are fantastically positioned to offer that training. They have fantastic basic training, which should have been allowed. I don't understand.
As the Prime Minister, I have to say that this is like the rating system. Just because you're rated on an airline, it doesn't mean you can jump into a microlight and fly. You must get the appropriate rating. So although Ian is capable of flying commercially, can he fly recreationally? He needs to prove that to us.
Yeah, you are right, Captain Prime Minister. Yeah.
I think I proved I can. I think something is probably worth clarifying, that there is no registration as of today. So anyone out there who sees any websites, there is no registration today. Do not click on a website. Do not get
that wants your money. Yes,
that wants your money, because
click on the link in the description.
Yeah.
Oh, hang on. No, I'm going to change it to pay here. Sorry, that's right. I should be.
Yeah, because one of the big concerns with this now is, off the back of this, it's opened a big door for scammers. We've seen it in the wake of Thomas Cook. We've seen it in the wake of.
Oh, really? What's happened in? For those of us not in the UK, what's happened in the wake of Thomas Cook?
People have been receiving phone calls that tell them they're going to get refunds, but it's always the same scam of you got to pay up front or give them your credit card number, and then it's so much out there now. So there is no registration as of today. Do not click a link. Do not give anyone any money. Here and now, nothing has changed. Belief is middle of the month.
Yeah, Ian, did they actually ever build the platform to actually do the registration, or is it just
for £4.1 million? Yeah.
There is a platform.
4.1 or 4.2?
There's a platform in place. I can't say.
Yeah, no, it was built, and also if you go to the CA website right now, it just says it started today, but there's no links to sign up. But there's nowhere to go. But if you look at the website, it says it has started today.
There's a rumor.
Yesterday. What is the date today? Today.
There's a rumor that there was some beta testing on it. And there was
really? Did anyone do
apparently
that? Did anybody go through it?
No idea.
Anyway,
there's a bit of paper gone. But no, it's here and now. The good thing is there looks to be good news. I never thought we'd see this, and there has to be some credit to James's lot, FPV UK as well. They've been banging the drum on this all the way through, as of the BMFA.
I think we've finally come to a point where, and at the end of the day, the number of people that stood up, no offense, Jez, but is a tiny number of people compared to, or a tiny amount of money behind them compared to the big business that wanted this to go through, and they made a difference. The people that stood up James, not James. Let's not credit James for anything, but no, the people that stood up and they really did an excellent job, and they stood up and they made a difference, and people were heard. For really, at the end of the day, what is a small group? It is not 190,000 people that they need to make this system work. So fair play, James. It's two items there that have to be ticked off as well done. As much as it hurts me to say, well done. No, well done, AR Paz. It's very, very, very good. There's two initiatives.
I'm not going to take any responsibility for the drone registration thing.
You're definitely part of it.
I've got involved in a certain part which I can't talk about. Yeah, with regards to the changes and stuff, I think a large part of that has been Rupert Dent, who's our regulations director, and Graham Brown, who's our CEO. Because what Rupert's been doing over the past sort of 18 months is building the relationships with all the stakeholders. And what that's allowed us to do is to get in the door with a lot of, these people within CAA, within DFT, and also allow, what Graham's been doing is doing a huge amount of networking, talking to, CEOs of different companies, to people within the CAA, DFT, and that's how he got involved with, Grant Shapp. So, I think Grant has got, I'm very, very fond of the guy now. He seems to be a great guy, very straight talking. He doesn't like to muck about. From some of the conversations that I've heard, he certainly gets straight to the point, and it sounds like he's very pragmatic in his approach. So I'm hoping that we at least get a decent reduction in the fee, and if we can go and get a slight change in the structure to make it more appealing for youngsters, and also to get rid of this rubbish of commercial operators having to basically do a questionnaire after they've just completed their license. I think those are the three things that we should concentrate on, and I think we're at least one of those three is complete, and the other two are still going to be in consultation for the next couple of weeks or so. So we will see. We will see what happens.
Well done, you. Now, look, I'm very conscious that we're keeping Jonty awake here, as has been said in the comments. Now, Jonty Slater, African drone name too long to fit in the window. What are we calling it? Forum. There we go.
Yeah.
Forum.
Yeah. So the Lake Victoria Challenge, as was launched months ago now, it feels like, because it got moved from Tanzania. Due to the Tanzanian government deciding that it was too close to local and national elections, and
glad you said that, not me. Yeah.
No, that's the thing. So it was Rwanda stepped in and said, actually, would you like to host 2020 challenge there? And so we grabbed Rwanda with both arms and said yes. And so it's now been rebranded the African Drone Forum. And then the flying competitions are going to be called the Lake Kiva Challenge now. But it's all going to be tied in with Africa Tech Summit that happens in Rwanda the 4th, 5th, and 6th of February. And so this now is going to be a combined expo that's now going to happen between Africa Tech Summit and the African Drone Forum and the expo and everything. And they're all going to happen around the 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th of February in Rwanda, really being a key place for Africa to really show off tech and drones. And we're going to have a load of static displays. And then now the competitions have had to be moved and redesigned to work in Rwanda under Rwandan airspace controls and all the restrictions that brings, and being very close to DRC airspace.
DRC? Well, you say very close. Just explain how close you mean.
So we looked at a number of different places on Lake Kiva. So Lake Kiva airspace is shared across Rwanda and DRC, and at some points we're less than 5 kilometers from DRC airspace, and we could have been really close. There is a kind of complication around there because there is 2 major airports at the north part of Lake Kiva. There's Goma Airport, which is in the DRC, which is where all of the UN is based for the DRC. It's one of their biggest air bases. And then we have, on Rwandan side, there's a small little airport, but the airspace around there is controlled by the DRC. And so you need to interact with them. And we are going to look at doing a flight from the north of the island to the south of the island. Also, the island's slightly more the lake's slightly more complicated in that it has methane and carbon dioxide releases randomly that occur over this lake, which will affect drones. But we've dealt with all of these kind of complications. We've relaunched the competition, and then we've reopened the registration for people to participate in the flying competitions to this Friday. So drone operators from around the world are still able to register, and I think we've got upwards of 45, nearly 50 drone platforms that have registered from around the world, from South Korea to West Coast of America, Africa. And then we're doing a number of other support mechanisms now. So we're going to do a business plan competition for business ideas in Africa to look at supporting drones. So people coming up with new business ideas about what drones can be used for across the continent of Africa. And there'll be a prize money for the best business idea, and they'll be all invited to come to Rwanda in, I think it's the 7th of February, to pitch their ideas on what drones can be used for across the continent of Africa. But it's become a lot bigger now that we've moved from Tanzania. Rwanda's now giving us a much bigger expo space where we can show. There's upwards of 1,000 people now expected to attend the expo about all of this, and dealing with all the legislation around it and how to do it. I mean, the biggest complication we've had across the whole of East Africa is all of these flying competitions are BVLOS. And doing BVLOS flights, I mean, it's still complicated even in Europe to deal with BVLOS flights. And how people are dealing with that from a monitoring point of view. We've been looking at different satellite tracking and GSM, GPS tracking systems, and should we be going to ADS-B tracking, and what should we be using? And it's all been how much tracking and how do we do integrated. So we've been speaking to UTM operators as well about being able to have a single display combining drones and manned aircraft so that everybody can track and everybody knows where all of our flights are going to be. This isn't something everybody says that that's being done, but when you actually ask people to show you live UTMs that are actually showing manned and unmanned aircraft in live, it's not something that is being used regularly around the world. And now the point is to show it more. And the whole team at Africa Drone Forum have been really trying to work on the safety aspect, and the safety has been our biggest aspect of dealing with this whole process.
And at the end of
sorry, Jonty, can I just cut in there? You said there's the competition for business plans. What's the prize?
50,000 euros.
Okay, that's fair enough, and that's to help them develop that business, is it? Yeah. Okay. And how many prizes are there? Is it just one prize, or are there multiple?
Well, this is where we're having different people have been coming on board. So we've been speaking to, because remember, this is linked with the World Economic Forum, and UK aid is part of this. So different donors are coming in wanting to support different elements of this whole process. So at the moment, there's a single prize pot, but we're expecting it to grow in the next few weeks. And as more donors come on board and more people come on board, we'll have more people support it. We've been speaking to the Department for International Trade in the UK. The German Department for Trade is also wanting to support German companies that want to work with African companies. So that's part of the process, is if an international company wants to then go to Africa and find a local partner, we'll sort of do a bit of a matchmaking kind of process to help people try to set up ideas. But we want people to come up with new ideas. I think the flying competitions are the whole basis, because the flying competitions have got nearly $300,000 worth of prize money associated with them. So the flying competitions are much bigger, but the business plan competition is something that's growing, and it's something that myself and Andy at the World Bank have been working on for a number of months now to build, and we'll be properly launching it. The press releases will go out in a couple of weeks, so you guys are hearing it as we're developing it, and everybody's getting more interested in these different elements. We're also looking at what we can do to support what drone stations look like. How do we set up? How can they be designed instead of looking like beautiful artistic drone ports? Actually, can they be realistic instead of just being a standard container that people seem to be putting together? Can they be made something that are community support mechanisms? Because we're talking about rural Africa, we're talking about how they can be supported and what drone ports can actually do to provide internet access and community. So there's a number of different aspects now that have become part of the African Drone Forum. James, does that answer your question? Sorry.
Yeah, I think so. What would be really interesting is these sort of, is there any mechanisms in place for, say, if for, I don't know, British or American startup companies, if they say wants to submit a business proposal, what is there any support in terms of linking them up with African companies? You know, is there kind of like a forum of a group of people who can sort of bounce ideas off each other and collaborate to create you know, some really interesting solutions?
I think we've tried to do that. I think the problem we've got, James, is that we've got to design, manage and run this and select who the finalists are going to be by the beginning of February. And because this change to Rwanda has only happened in the last few weeks, it's caused the timeline for everything to shrink down. So a lot of this is proof of concept at the moment and showing that this can run. I think what we're hoping to do is, we know that Africa Drones can link people up with other people in the network, and so if Western companies are interested in it, they can link up with people who are in the African drone space. But I don't know how much we want to do complete matchmaking at the moment. I just think we've got limited time span, and we've got to select by the beginning of January who's going to be our finalists so that we can fly them to Rwanda in time. And I'm realizing this is the 1st of October, and I actually would like to have a Christmas at some point, so I don't want the whole of my Christmas to be finishing matchmaking.
Brilliant. And you get free flights to Rwanda, do you?
So the 10 top finalists, so the 10 finalists will be selected to fly to get to Rwanda. So we're going to have, so we've got, the process is going to be, so we've got the flying competitions. So there's the 3 flying competitions: the find and assess, the emergency delivery, and the pickup challenge. And 3 to 4 participants for each one of those competitions will be selected. And then for the business plan competition, up to 10 finalists from around Africa will be invited to come to Rwanda to present their ideas. If there's a overseas participant, we'll have a conversation with them in terms of supporting them to come to Rwanda. But this is more about supporting local African drone businesses in terms of them coming up with the best ideas. And that has to be the key. This is about African Drone Forum, not the global drone forum. Europe's had a lot of support, and Africa has the chance now to leapfrog a lot of the controls that Europe has been putting in place. So let Africa lead at this point in time, I think. And I say this as an African. I know I sound like a Brit, but my passport's green. That's a South African passport that I hold. So I am wanting Africa to be supported here.
Well, it's certainly a brilliant initiative, and I think you know, there's Africa is a great continent to innovate in. Trying to go and get drones flying BVLOS in Europe or America is almost impossible at the moment, unless you basically close off the airspace. But as Zipline have shown, you know, already, this can already be done in the African continent. You know, this is where a lot of the big innovations are going to happen. Zipline have already moved across to, I believe, Philippines now as well, and so a lot of these new developing countries is actually where the biggest innovation is happening in the drone industry right now. And those companies that recognize that are the ones that will succeed, in my opinion.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I think the biggest thing is that we selected, because of where this was funded out of, this is eVTOL flights, which is very different from the zipline kind of process and some of the other hybrid models that people have been going down. Because the majority of, even if you look at Zipline's own data, most of their flights are 50 kilometers. That's what they're doing, is because they're an electric motor. But even then, we can get those with quadcopters and octocopters, can achieve those ranges as well. And so can we do that in a safe way where landing can take place, that it isn't a drop package? Can that be done in a really safe way so that it actually can be without it having to be parachuted down? Now, Zipline's process, having now seen it myself, it's an amazing process in terms of their capture mechanism and in terms of their launch mechanism. That capture mechanism, in terms of that single hook that they have to do on their line, it's about a 3 millimeter gap that the cable has to get caught in. It's amazing the accuracy they can do with that autonomous drone. And so that does show, and this is part of the aspect that I have a problem with the CAA and all the legislation across Europe and North America, is that if you can track the drone, you should be able to then communicate with the drone and be able to safely manage the drone. This doesn't have to be worrying about, it's going to interact with manned flight and it's going to have to do with it. This can be done in a safe way, as long as everybody understands how it works and that it can be done in a way. These autonomous drones or semi-autonomous drones are really clever now. The level of accuracy that they're able to achieve, Zipline is showing, and we just need everybody else in the marketplace to actually show that this actually is a market that can be done. And this is what
they're saving lives, Jonty. They're saving lives. They're saving lives. There's no let's not beat around the bush. Their blood deliveries are saving lives, and that's good enough, isn't it? Anywhere in the world, everyone gets out of the way of an ambulance, don't they?
Yeah. But it's also, they're doing it in such a way that, seeing when the orders come in to when they launch to when they deliver,
I know.
It's done in such a way that can be done. But can it be expanded in a way? But also, it shouldn't be, and this is me from a commercial side of point, is at the moment Zipline is a monopoly. And we need other people to come into that space, other people to feel that there is a service that can be done. There's a competitive market that can be run across this. Zipline is the leader, and they're showing that everything that can be done, but other people can get into this market. And other people have the capability, just their Zipline is showing everything and grabbing onto all of these contracts very quickly.
We have it, don't we? VTOL is the answer here. All we do is get it right, and there are solutions out there today that can do it. As you say,
but you've got to secure the trouble with VTOL is, see, I'm not a big, as much as I like the new African Drone Forum and Late Victorian Challenge, I'm not sure that VTOL was the right way to go. Just because Zipline own the takeoff, they own the landing, and they own the delivery. And I thought at the beginning, I thought Zipline was rubbish. I thought it was a rubbish idea. But now I'm afraid it's like I work for them. I'm a bit of a convert. I completely get it now. But it's the ownership of the takeoff and landing. Now, down here, we had a blood delivery thing, I don't know, early 2000. And it was off a really low impact rail. And so it's sort of one of my biggest arguments is, well, how on earth are you going to launch it out of wind? They Zipline chuck the thing off that rail at such a speed you won't believe it. There's no way. There's no such thing as downwind with that. They make the wind when it goes, and not only does it do that, but it recovers the energy from the launch, from the whatever they call it, the thing going up the rail. They recover the energy from that in order for the next launch or part of the next launch. And Andrew, VTOL, no. Andrew, I see what you're doing, Andrew. No, in the comments. Andrew, no. But each part of what they do is so well nuanced. And again, I don't work for them, but what they've gone is they've gone off to a country where the big venture capitalists would say there's no money there. It's not America. It's not England. We're not going to make $1 gajillion out of this. But they've steadily refined their product to a point that it's very, very far ahead of anyone else. It really is.
It's hard not to be fast, is it?
Yeah.
But I think what they need to, the reason eVTOL was because of renewables and not being greenhouse gases and all that kind of aspect from the World Bank kind of funding to start the Lake Victoria Challenge and everything, and now the African Drone Forum. But we do need to show that everything else can change from this, that we can have it. But it comes down to safety. A lot of the VTOL craft, I don't know if I would feel comfortable with them flowing over populated areas. Where you look at what Zipline have done, they've got their parachute built in.
Yeah,
they can at any time ATC or them can trigger the parachute to be dropped if it's dangerous or it's going near a manned aircraft or something like that. They've got their 3 GPSs on board that has to agree of where their location is and remind it back. I mean, they require a 3G or a 4G connection to do that. So they're requiring good internet connections, internet connectivity. They haven't gone down a satellite route yet. That is something that we need to see about getting satellite operators to be able to provide tracking and everything like that. The problem is a lot of the tracking systems require the onboard battery. You can get the GSM, GPS, little ping trackers and stuff like that people can use, but that requires the GSM network. Yeah, exactly, Gary. But I think if we're going to go longer range and we're going to go out into the areas where there isn't great connectivity, you need to go satellite. You need to go with something. But
why? All right, how many airplanes are there?
Just
how many airplanes are in the world flying? Do you think, Jonty?
I know, but I know you look at it, but that one aircraft colliding with that one drone package will harm the industry more than we can even realize. And I think
I know of a UTM that has run simulations and other stuff across London and has so far failed to hit anything. They've tried their best to hit things. I know there's always a risk, and Bruce is our king of risk. He'll know.
Look, we've got David as part of our safety team, and David will go on continuously about safety and will drive me crazy at some points, going how safety we need to do. And we're requiring everybody. One of the things that we're requiring everybody to do for the flying competition is to come up with their own ops manual to show how they can do BV loss. Because everybody says they can do BV loss, but actually you go, what's your operational process for doing BV loss? They're like, we don't know yet. So people are still having to evolve a lot of this process.
Well, that's a great. You say that actually, Jonty, because I'm working with a couple of companies right now on developing BV loss operational safety cases in the UK. And so I think things are coming along. I think the apps in the Western world for sure. The big barrier, the big technical, well, I wouldn't say technical, but regulatory barrier is all about electronic conspicuity. Once we have that, once everyone knows where everyone else is, the air risk can be mitigated. But until then, we're in a situation where you could be flying along and you don't know if you're going to hit a helicopter or not. And so that I think is really key for especially the Western world. In places like Africa, I imagine that segregation can probably work because the airspace is less congested. But certainly,
I mean, we chose spaces where we couldn't, where we could restrict for certain of the flying competitions, but we didn't want to. We're going to fly a drone through Goma airspace. We're going to do something to show that you can track it, that it can go on a UTM, that we can have a screen that shows manned aircraft and unmanned aircraft flying together. I think it's just which is the technology. Are we going to go down the route of a satellite-based tracking system, or are we going to go down a GSM GPS tracker, or are we going to go ADS-B? What are we going to do as that tracking mechanism that gives it? And if what Canada and Germany are doing with not allowing ADS-B to be used, what is the basis that we're going to go down that route of? Is what technology is going to be default selected for these drones to be carrying.
I'll tell you right now. I'll tell you right now, and this is the way it's going to be because I say so. No, at the end of the day, it might have been James that actually said this. So certainly one of our regular guests have said that we are dealing with digital devices. Our has digital devices, so we can feed. There's no need for aircraft to see us. We just need to be able to see them. So if aircraft have ADS-B, we can, to get out of the way. In fact, Ian's done a video on this. You can have carrier boards for your autopilot now that have ADS-B receivers in. We can get out of the way of ADS-B. So that's that one done. Yeah, come on, Ian, hurry up, find it. There it is.
Completely Gary. It's all about if at the end of the day, if a drone crashed into a manned aircraft, who's going to get the blame? It's going to be the drone.
Oh yeah, true.
If we're going to get the blame for it, then we'll take full responsibility for getting out of the way.
We have the technology to deal with this. It's easy.
Yeah,
we've got enough.
It is easy.
This is easy. Autopilot can do it. You've got LiDAR.
DJI can do
it. Anyone can. You've got LiDAR. You've got infrared sensors. You've got ADS-B now. You can couple all of these together and make it see an aircraft, drop height, done. It's easy. It's possible. It's doable. This isn't an issue.
And aircraft don't want drones appearing on their in-flight devices, whatever they have, because that'd be really dull and they'd have to spill their coffee or whatever. They don't need to see it. And to put an aircraft in so then you have the air traffic management system to put that in there. We have ground control stations. We just pump our data from the ground into that. I'm sorry, Jonty. It's a difficult one.
No.
And the thing is, if you look at Lake Kivu, I did a little video on this because I may have heard this was happening before. If you look at where the two airfields are, it's absolutely nuts. So if you consider how other places work in the world where they don't do BV loss, don't do this, don't do whatever, these guys are going to have a competition where there's two international airfields about 5 kilometers apart. The whole international boundary is about 15 kilometers at the width, and then it's all over water, and that water is not only crocodile infested but gaseous infected. To the east, it's all mountains and radio blocking stuff. This is one of the most complicated places to have such an exciting competition in the world, and it's going to be great. It'll be fantastic fun. And the people that bring flying platforms, sorry, I'll let you speak again, Josie. The people that bring flying platforms have to be confident that they're going to fly for 20 kilometers over water and do what they tell us they're going to do. And that's the interesting thing.
Look, I think actually not crocodile infested because I swam in that lake and there was no crocodiles.
No, because of all the gas. It's dense. But anyway,
it is. You swim in it, and there's bubbles coming up all around you. It's really interesting, and they're taking out the methane, and they're actually they've got the extraction points and stuff like that on in the lake. But the reason we chose it is because we can prove some of these things that need to be proved in Europe that Ian and James were talking about. Can we prove some of these things? Can we take some of these ideas and show that we can run a flying competition, that we can do these BB loss flights in a safe way that can prove some of these things and allow everybody to go, okay, this can be done safely. This can be done in a way. And anything that Ian and James want to bring in, that want to add in, once we've got our ops manual, we can share it with people around in the community to get their feedback on it so that we can get it right. Then people can do it, and people can then say, yep, we're getting this right. We may not get it right the first time, but we're trying to prove that some of this model can work, and some of this stuff can be possible.
Jonty, I'd definitely like to chat with you afterwards for sure, because I think there's a lot we could share with each other, and I'd be happy to volunteer to help out, and if I can in any way. Just going on your website, I was just having a look to see how people can register. I see that the deadline is on the 4th of October, is it?
That's for the flying competitions, yes.
Okay, and so if people want to register for the business plan,
When
How
I
do
get
they
it
do
finished, James, when I get it finished, I'll let everybody on this place know, and then I'll put it out there. But at the moment, it's sitting as a to-do list on my thing to put that out. So we'll be launching that mid-October with a final registration deadline in mid-November. So business plan competition. We're just waiting for everybody to sign off on it that wants to have their name associated with it at the moment, and trying to bring donors and funders together and everybody to agree where the comma should be is more complicated than I even think about. So, but that's part of the reason for doing this competitions. So yeah, James, once we know more, I'll come back on and talk about the whole reason for it.
That's brilliant. I know there's a lot of rhinos out in Africa.
Not as many as you think.
No, well, that's the problem, you see.
No, well, actually, the big thing has been that because of where we are in Rwanda, it's the gorillas. So gorilla tracking and being able to do like that Rwanda's a big thing around there. And we've got a lot of stuff that animal tracking and stuff like that. But one of the things that we're doing is we've had to amend the find and assess competition to make it more around where you can safely track it. Because when we looked at the safety process for a lot of these VTOL craft, is that they didn't have onboard parachutes, they didn't have onboard safety systems, so we aren't able to actually fly over urban areas or even anywhere where we couldn't get a safety process through. So we're actually having to fly over unmanned islands and map those unmanned islands, and so we've had to increase the resolution that we want these find and assess participants to do, and that's made it more complicated, and generating the orthomosaics and everything like that for a BV loss flight. Everybody says they can do it, but when we're saying, okay, prove that a BV loss ops can happen for it, people have been doing it, and you hear about people who've mapped an African city, and you're like, how have they mapped it doing it under standard VTOL conditions? They haven't. They've had to go BV loss, but not.
No one's done it. No one's done it. No one's done it in Africa on VTOL. No one.
And I think we're seeing it. So I think we're seeing it come through. And yeah, Mad RC, I know everybody's saying ADSB, but you can't do it in Canada. Canada ADSB has just been ruled. You can't use an ADSB, and I think Germany as well.
Yeah, because you can spoof it too easily. I could, if I had a little bit of cash in my back pocket, I could buy the gear to spoof it tomorrow. The ADSB was invented in the 1990s, people. The 1990s. Remember when your phone was like oh yeah, like mine. That's
Gary, you know my thoughts on this. I'm with you, but the industry is pushing ADSB in. Okay, let's ignore.
No, ADSB-in's okay, but now you need manned aviation to comply,
yes, we do.
and or you need FLARM. Now in Europe, FLARM has been adopted by helicopters. It's okay. So there's multiple standards. But
I don't think FLARM's not secure as well. I mean, FLARM's not.
No, FLARM's better than ADSB. And
what's that new one, Gary? The one which will basically take in anything, and but it's got its own protocol as well. It's something like flight aware or something. No, not flight aware.
No, you're thinking about. Hang on, I'll remember in a minute. And funny enough, the receivers, the gear is called the Rosetta thing, and I live just outside of Rosetta. But that's another thing altogether. I'll remember the name of it in a moment.
But yeah, it essentially takes in ADSB, it takes in FLARM, and then it
open glider network. Yeah, it pulls them all in, and then also it retransmits it on 915 megs via LoRa to aircraft in the air. So the aircraft in the air doesn't need to have any of that gear. It can see stuff on all methods in one place, and that's kind of what we need to get to.
It's almost as if you had that on a drone, that could almost be a mitigation for air risk in any operational safety case. You know, if you could see gliders with FLARM and manned aircraft with ADSB, you know, this is the big problem: is, you know, what does a paraglider do? You know,
no. They have open glider network, and they have pilot aware, and no, there are things.
Exactly.
They have one of these. That's what they have. They have one of these here, and so, but yes, but you're talking about consolidating it into one place and chucking it all out again.
Yeah.
How do they get that message? And that's why even the RAF, the Tucanos fly with FLARM because of the paragliding and gliding guys in Yorkshire. So yeah, there's multiple ways, and ADSB unfortunately has been fixated on rant hat on. We're not letting Bruce talk, but rant hat on, and Bruce can disagree or agree with me here. But big contractors put in the ground stations across America and spent millions of dollars, but didn't realize people would come along with Raspberry Pis and SDR receivers, and then beat them to their own data. Well, no, there's better. The CAA and thankfully the CAA in the UK is being slightly pragmatic about it and realizing that these sort of citizen networks of receivers are better than the very expensive groups of receivers. But I want to let's just take it back to Lake Victoria or the last one. But Lake Victoria first, because this event is born of something that's already had BV lost delivery flights to an island, and I was at a place where I was having pints of gin and tonic, not this one, whilst this flight was happening. There was a cocktail party was happening whilst this BVLOS first big flight televised thing was happening. And in the rest of the world, people were going nuts. You need this permission, that permission, you need this, that, the other. They just brought all the dignitaries out, and it was done, and it worked, and it was easy, and it wasn't that hard. And plenty of Nicola's not here. Nicola flies these distances like always. So it really isn't that hard, people. And
but people want to. But Gary, people want to not worry. They're worried about flying over a road, major roads, or flying over specific things. The restrictions in Australia that have been put in place, and these are stuff that people just need to accept that drones can do it. They can do it safely. They can geofencing. There can be restrictions put on it that allows everybody to safely fly. And people just need to stop worrying about it.
As dodgy as David Guerin is with his big safety hat on, he does come from the Outback Challenge, the world's best RPAS competition, and the Lake Victoria Challenge and the Lake Kivu and the African Drone Forum, whatever it's going to be called in the end, is a natural progression from that. And it's a proper competition being run properly. Oh dear, I'm a bit of an advocate head on there, aren't I? But no, it is really cool. And it's not one of these half-assed things that people will then stand up and say, we're the best in the world because we did this. It will beat every metric for most competitions just in the first 5 minutes of flight time. There's a lot of rubbish out there, and this is not that.
No, and the way that we've designed the competition, actually, once people get to Rwanda, it's running in two parts now. So the first part is the safety pre-qualification stage, which we're going to run for the first 5 or 6 days. Then that's going to be run on the lake. Then everybody's going to go back for the expo. So we're going to have everybody at the expo, and then we're going to have the final part of the competition will happen after the expo now. And because of that, we're allowing people, the reason why is that because February on Lake Kiva can have weather issues and can have rain, and we were worried about being able to give everybody fair access to flight times and everything like that. But being able to show everybody that we can fly, and that we can fly safely, and we can try all these things out, and we can show different UTM platforms running, and that we can do this. I mean, the first part, that safety and qualification stage, that's almost what most competitions actually do. The flying competition part is the part that we're extending beyond what most people have been trying, and actually being able to safely drop 2 blood saline packs to the ground without it being split, and trying to go down that level of competition that's where it's got more complicated, and trying to package vials and trying to be able to do the level of find and assess that we're asking people to do. That's where it gets a whole lot more complicated. And I don't think I'm really interested in seeing how people come up with different things and how they can use the data correctly and how they can manage this. And I mean, it could revolutionize BVLOS drones across the world. And we're hoping. I mean, that's been the whole aim of this whole program. So, yeah, I think it's just going to be. What we'd like to do is keep you guys updated and let you guys know what things change and how are we going to do this and what February will look like. I think I have no idea. Part of it
definitely, Jonty, keep our pass updated, and we'll spread the good word. So we'll be happy to support what you're doing, because we think, you know, these kind of competitions is. They always say if you set up a competition, you get about 10 times the output that you do by investing money into a company, because people will go out and spend, you know, hundreds of thousands of pounds developing solutions to win a £50,000 prize, for example. But that's what really spurs innovation. And as you've seen with the Outback Challenge has been a brilliant event to progress the industry. You only have to look at ArduPilot and the development that's gone on there. A lot of that development has happened through the Outback Challenge. A lot of the features that are within that software have been developed from the Outback Challenge. So competitions are a brilliant way to spur innovation. And I think you're on to you've got a little golden nugget there, and I think it will do well.
Well, James, remember, so I've got into drones because of the Lake Kivu and everything like that, but that's all I do is design competitions. So that's what I do as a job, is design competitions in every single field. So everything from medical, how to do new kinds of injections, and how to do new kinds of how to deal with urinary tract infections and stuff like that. I run those kind of competitions all the time. So drones for me is just another area.
I need to stop you, Jonty. What we do here with that is we ask Boris up there about urinary tract infections. He's our expert. Yeah. Sorry, Jonty. Sorry.
No, that's fine. But competitions do stimulate, and we're seeing people really push their drones. And in some ways, somebody being able to run something around hybrids, I think hybrids are something that we've seen a lot of interest in, and we're seeing a lot of people come up with some really interesting ways of these quadcopters with a petrol engine attached, and they're really getting some amazing distances and amazing space that they can operate in very, very safely. But yeah, we made that decision quite early on to do eVTOL, and we're stuck with it. So, and I think for good reasons. It's an area that needs to a thing, and how we transport the batteries to Rwanda is something that we're just dealing with at the moment.
Maybe we need a UK competition to look at seeing if we can break down some of the barriers of BVLOS in the UK. That would be quite an interesting one, because we haven't really we've had some university-based events, but not any sort of business or commercial related competitions in the UK.
So, James, there is. So Nesta ran something called Fly High.
Yeah.
Which is stalled out at the moment. There is something hopefully going to be in terms of making it into to the next stage of that. But I think they're needing the CAA, they're needing Department of Transport. They're trying to do that, is trying to make it go on. And but yeah, it does get, it is something that in the UK is slightly more complicated. And especially if we're thinking about it, especially if you take the 3 times of competition, because what Fly High is using is very similar to the Africa Drone Forum kind of thing in terms of delivery, pick up, and find and assess. But they're trying to do it in a very commercial European aspect. And so, yeah, I think it's interesting to see where people will come into all of this whole to space in the future. But we really want to see what the Germans will do. The Germans, with their heavy lift kind of drones, they're talking about, what's it, a ton now? Some of the stuff that the Germans are doing. That's when tracking and drones. I think this is where we cover drones under so many different categories, all the way from little toys that the kids do to those massive things that are going to carry a ton or a couple of tons. I think autonomy.
But they're simple. They're in the airway system. They're an aircraft. It's simples.
I know, but from the PR point of view and from the press point of view, they still label those as drones instead of autonomous planes. And And I think it's that branding is something that we're trying to deal with as well.
Don't get me started about air taxis, because I still think the helicopter has still got a few years left to go before we start seeing 12 rotor autonomous air taxis floating around. I kind of see the UAM market as trying to tackle 3 problems all at once. First problem is being able to encourage sort of more flights within congested areas. So that's kind of like a business case challenge. You've then got the challenge of autonomy, which is like basically sticking an autopilot in a helicopter and trying to automate that flying. And then thirdly, they're trying to tackle the whole aircraft design challenge, which is trying to create a more competitive aircraft to the helicopter. And so those 3 challenges, you put them together and you UAM. But what happens if we just tackle one at a time? I think we're probably going to be more productive if we go for one at a time. But that's just my opinion, and does not represent the views of any association that I'm
Oh, James.
Very good, very good.
James, it's all under UAS here, so everything's being assigned to that.
Spencer saying auto rotation on helicopters is always nice. It's true. And Rybat saying, how about the 400-pound gorilla? We don't have any 400-pound here. US government's management. Oh, yeah. We'll talk about that in a minute, Rybat. We'll talk about that one in a minute. And Andrew Gatwick. Yeah, whatever. And I just checked my email now because I wasn't bothering to listen to the last bit. And the guys from Skydio said about an hour ago, please, can we join? So, hello, Skydio. Hello. I'm sorry. Hopefully they'll come along in a minute. I sent them a link. At the end of the day, so Australia's done a fantastic job for improving the technology, and the Lake Victoria Challenge is bringing that technology, or the Lake Kivu or African Drone Forum or whatever you want to call it, is bringing that technology to a place that really needs it, and it makes a difference, and it takes it from an abstract idea to something that is saving lives, and it can only be a good thing. Obviously I'm biased, I'm in Africa, but it can only be a good thing. Can only be a good thing. And we've got to sell positive stories now. And Jonty, you said you could only be here for a few minutes. You did
a little bit longer, but and I'm running.
That's all right. No, that's all good. It's all good.
I'll just sit in the background now. I look like I'm asleep.
You just sit in the background. You just sit in the background now. Did we talk about registration? I can't remember.
Yeah, we got that out of the way.
Did we get that?
What I want to know is whether the allegations are true, Bruce, about you touching what was her name, Charlotte Edwards.
Talk of these things. I noticed with your not being a member, your disclaimers. Are you planning to run for my position, mate?
No, I'm sat there on the opposition side. I was going to change my name to Jeremy Corbyn, but I thought that given the amount of times I've switched sides, I thought that maybe switching my name might not give the right impression.
I thought you were off the fence, not back on it, James.
Yeah.
It's another fence for him. He loves his fences, doesn't he? He loves his fences, that boy. He's captain. I think we should change it to Captain B&Q or something. Home of the fence. Home of the fence. Yeah, no. This week's been a bit of a. Well, you're going into winter up there, aren't you? But it seems there's a little bit of news beginning to bubble up. Rybat has mentioned the US government is preparing to prevent DJI drones from being used in public safety again. Look, all I'll say to that is that you heard it on SUS News First about 3 years ago now. Those problems haven't gone away with DJI. They are still there. There are still issues. And quick! Someone from Skydio, quick, come and join, because they form the American Drone Federation or something like that. Something sounds a bit Star Trek anyway, and that's about buying only American stuff. But they're always going to be defeated by their ITAR regulations. If they're never going to beat ITAR. That's why there's never going to be a really successful American drone manufacturer. that's the bottom line. Does anyone know what that actually means? International
yeah, I had it up just now.
Something. And
yeah, it's the movement of arms, isn't it? Basically,
Bruce knows because that's why he got into trouble with his
intercontinental missile.
Yeah, Bruce knows because of his cruise missile.
But New Zealand didn't have any of that kind of stuff. They said, the government here said, yeah, you can export your technology to Iran. We don't care. And then America said, what are you saying?
I do know a fellow. I do know a fellow. No names, no pack drill. Who? And I think I said, didn't I say this last week? If you have an idea, it's not even just if you make the hardware. It's not just making the hardware and getting the thing to work. If you have an idea in America, that idea is subject to ITAR. So you are not allowed to have weapons-based ideas. You must take them. You must go overseas, then have that idea.
Yeah.
And then you go. But so I knew there was an autopilot developed.
That kid who strapped that pistol to that drone should never have put it online. He shared the idea. Did they? I'm assuming they arrested him under ITAR. Then did they? Remember that kid?
No, he got done for having child porn on his computer, didn't he? But anyway, but that's another thing altogether. No, there is a particular autopilot that was invented in Australia, even though the chap was American. He flew to Australia. He wrote down, he published everything in Australia, and then he went back to America. And they were able to still produce and export it from America because the idea was actually born in Australia. And so it didn't fall under ITAR. But if you produce something, have the idea and produce it all in America, it falls under ITAR. So that's here we are. Hang on. Above and Beyond is doing this one here, so I'll add that over.
I don't know. We'll have to see what happens with this. No one knows. The thing with the US or any country is you just don't know. I've never seen an issue with any country saying we're only going to buy one we're going to buy American, we're going to buy British, we're going to do that. It's what comes along with it. I always find distasteful is everyone's spying on everyone. Let's not pretend they're not for 1 minute. Okay,
sure.
We wrote the rule book on this. If we want to go back to talk about spying, the British handed out Enigma like candy at the end of the Second World War, and went, "Oh look, this is brilliant. It's not been hacked. Go and use this for all your governmental communication." Let's not sit here and say we're good, they're bad. There's good spying or bad spying. Everyone's at it. Protect your data. If you protect your data, it doesn't matter who makes the equipment. It's that simple. But it's going to be interesting to see what happens. It is going to be interesting to see what happens.
But even let's say they did that, and let's say they ban them, there still won't be. I don't think an American manufacturer can.
I don't see how they can. I don't see how they can do it. They might, and at the end of the day, the Trump administration is
not long for this world. Anyway,
unpredictable. Let's just say that normal things don't happen in politics right now, so you can't bet anything on anything. But what I don't like about this whole thing, is it's always aimed at country, China. Why does it have to be one's good and one's bad? And it just
bit like Wales and England, really, isn't it?
Yeah, but there's a good reason for the hate and the negativity there.
Oh, I think you're right there. Yeah.
From our side, anyway. but no, it's going to be interesting. I don't think it will happen. Personally, I do not see it happening. But big but.
No, I don't. And either. And you also have to remember we've come from a point where people were saying there'll be no such thing as a sub $1,000 drone. There's no way it'll ever happen. In about 2007 someone told Patrick and I that some grown up and we said there would be, and we didn't foresee there'd be the sub $500 GPS drone. And that's already happened. People really didn't see the technology evolving to where it is so quickly.
No, and we've had today we've had Skydio release the Skydio 2. We've had Unique have released a new model. You've got aircraft coming in left, right, and center from cheap manufacturers. So, technology is just marching on every minute.
Have Unique really released a new model?
No. Really? Okay. Their users are not happy. Funny enough, I was trolling the forums this week, expecting to get my head ripped off, actually. But they are not happy. Existing Unique users are not happy. You've got the H3, which has an all-new camera, basically the same aircraft, in a partnership with Leica. I like the look of the camera. They've basically taken the H Plus, tidied it up a bit, added one new feature, which I believe is cruise control, and then put a nice new camera on it with some special settings. They've called it Y-Log. It's got some Adobe Premiere LUT. I had to write this lot down when I was looking. Still PX4 based. Still uses the ST16. There's a lot to like about the camera. I think the camera will be decent because I tested the H Plus and the camera was really good. But one big but, it is not a mechanical shutter, so it is still no good for mapping.
Rolling shutter. Yeah.
So it's still no good for mapping. And it comes in at a hefty price tag as well. It's not cheap.
All in all, it covers nothing you want it to cover.
No, the Unique users are not happy because the camera's not backwards compatible as we understand it with the H Plus. They're basically having to buy another aircraft again to get more features, and it's not a step ahead enough for their users yet. I don't see what it's going to drag in new people either, because you're not going to look at that and think, ooh. But it does sit in a segment where there is no aircraft because the Phantom 4 currently isn't available. So it is sitting in a hole, larger aircraft, not Inspire 2 class, but somewhere in between, 1-inch sensor. But the Mavic 2 can do most of that.
Well, here you are. You said
I think in the recreational field, there's 3 players, and only 3 players left. Like, I think Unique are kind of trailing DJI. I don't think they're doing anything particularly different to what DJI are doing. DJI are ahead of them, so I would put Unique out of this equation. But you've got Skydio, you've got Parrot, and you've got DJI.
Why did you say Parrot? Why did you say Parrot? Tell us why you say Parrot.
Well, they've got the Anafi, haven't they? And the main reason is actually down to politics rather than anything else. It's if you've got military or government operators who want to be flying small, lightweight drones, and I'm probably undoing my own argument here because I started off saying recreational, but I suppose what I mean is small drone, low cost drone market. It's between 3 players, and I think
someone knocked Jonty. Get him up.
We're just going to see him disappear off.
But yeah, in the sort of what I would call the Mavic class, there are 3 players. It's Skydio, it's Parrot, and it's DJI at the moment. And I think DJI had the full market share, but I can see them starting to get squeezed out by the likes of Skydio and Parrot and Anafi. I don't know whether Parrot are going to come out with an Anafi 2, maybe within the next sort of 12 months. They might, because it's already 312 grams or whatever it is.
Yeah, and it's not far off. Yeah.
When you look at the new regulations of 250 grams, they're probably the closest to achieving that with a 4K camera. They're closer than DJI are. So when the new EU regulations come in, then I think Parrot are actually in a good position with regards to that. So Parrot, DJI, and Skydio, because Skydio are just cool and they can.
Now hang on a minute. I'm gonna channel. I have a feeling I can feel something coming through from Ian. I can feel something coming through. Did you discover anything earlier, Ian, about Parrot and yes, anyone else?
Something very interesting, and I fell across this by accident. Obviously, the Skydio 2 today, 12 megapixel stabilized gimbal, first time. Last count didn't have that, did it? If I recall 100%. 4K, 60 frames a second. Downside is the sensor size. It's still 0.3, same as the Mavic 2 Zoom or the earlier aircraft. But Skydio is $999 on its own with no remote. However, if you buy it with a remote, it's another $150. But that remote is made by Parrot, and it is the same remote that is used on the Anafi. It is virtually identical to look at. It does say Skydio on it, but there appears to be some tie-in there between them. So interesting times.
So where is Skydio? What country is Skydio?
USA, fully
US.
Fully US. Okay. Now, the interesting thing is the Skydio comes without a remote controller as standard, so it's like smartphone control, very much like the Spark was in the basic pack when it originally released. You then have the option of a remote controller or a beacon, and the beacon looks quite cool. It's got GPS, it's got other things in it as well, but they're $150 extras. So if you wanted the Skydio with a remote, it's $1,150, or if you want it with the beacon, it's whatever, it's 113, isn't it? So it's not an all-in-one package straight out the door, but it is interesting that they're using a Parrot remote controller. What my only concern is that there is no CE spec for this at all. Whether this will come to Europe at all is so my big question.
What's the main difference then between the Skydio 1 and the Skydio 2? What have they done with this new model that wasn't there before?
It's now got a 3-axis gimbal. I think the first one is safe to say that it was a test bed platform. It was a demo of what they were capable of doing. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't ideal as a camera drone in the way it worked. What they seem to have done is gone, right, this works. Now we're going to make a camera drone out of it. And that's what they appear to have done now. More processing. It's got the NVIDIA TX2, I think it is, on board. They're saying it can do 3 kilometers of range, which must probably be a Wi-Fi HD link. Don't see it being anything else. And they're saying 45 megapixel of visual sensing on board. It's got cameras everywhere for full 360-degree object sensing. It looks very interesting. Very interesting.
And how much does it weigh?
That's a very good question. I'll tell you now. I got the spec up here. 20 odd minutes of flight time as well. Let me just get down to it. Here we go. Okay, weight, aircraft system. Okay, size, weight with battery, 775 grams.
Okay, so we're looking at a C1 category.
C1. Yeah.
So sub 900, basically do what you want.
Yeah, and it, to a point, it's capable of that. It's going to be interesting. My big question is it coming to Europe? At the moment, there's no hints on the website. There's no nothing.
Adam and Kyle, I know you're on the email. Come in, join the stream.
I'd love to see it in action. You know, from the footage they're showing, like if you look at the marketing, they're clearly going after DJI. That's for sure. You've only got to watch the video, the website.
Are they going after DJI, or are they going after DJI to buy them out?
What would be interesting is when they apply the Skydio technology to the commercial market, because I think the whole idea of being able to fly around via imagery and being able to 3D model your environment, it applies itself perfectly to photogrammetry. And being able to model a 3D asset using a system like this, the only way to do that is if the drone is able to build up a 3D model of its environment on the fly.
Yeah.
The only way to do automated photogrammetry of 3D assets, like 2D assets has been done because you just basically create a grid and it just flies the grid and 3D models that. But to do 3D, you have to, because it's so variable and there's such a change in the environment, it has to be able to 3D model that on the fly and then say, okay, well, there's a gap there. I need to go and take some more pictures of that area to fill in that gap. The only way to do that is on the fly photogrammetry, and that's what Skydio is already doing. So when they apply that technology to the commercial market, that is where I see the real huge benefit in that technology. And obviously they're at the moment harnessing the recreational market because that's where the money is. You know, all successful companies so far have exploited the recreational market to begin with. But then, as you've seen with DJI, they're starting now to venture into the commercial market, but they're kind of limited by the technology that they have. So whereas Skydio are already kind of on that next step of how do we model the environment and how do we then apply that to a commercial market. So I think Skydio, give it 2 or 3 years, they're going to be looking at commercial solutions, and that's when things are going to get really interesting in the sort of photogrammetry market.
Well, what's very interesting is they've already launched it with drone-based support out the door. I think it's drone-based. Let me just get this 100% correct, because they announced it on Twitter at the same time. So they've already launched it with support for mapping with a provider straight out the door. Also, you know, what I do quite like is when you're looking down the website, there's a kind of name dropping in there. And what I mean by that is they're using the NVIDIA Jetson. They're using the Qualcomm Red Dragon processor. They're using the Sony IMX577 sensor. They're being quite open about what's on board. There's quite a lot of nice kit on this. You know, there really is. You know, often you don't get that detail from anyone. You know, Parrot don't hand that stuff over. No one does. Yet they're giving out a lot of the this is the components we're using in this. We're building a quality product, is what they're trying to say.
But Ian, aren't they taking a mobile phone? They're just taking a mobile phone processor and a thing and taking it to that next stage, aren't they?
That Jetson TX2 is a powerful board. It's more like a decent laptop on board than a. Then again, you could argue, you know, the new iPhone is as powerful as I say. This is probably as smart as a smart drone has come yet. You know, is probably the correct term. But it's all software. You know, it's a ton of processing power with clever software. What they're doing here?
I'm going to say good night, and I will catch up with you soon.
All right, Jonty. All right, thank you very much for joining us. Oh, he said good night quickly. Oh, shame. He only said he could join us for half an hour, so fair enough. Hopefully, I am, honestly, that's why I keep looking away. The guys from Skydio were about. They were going to join us tonight, and hopefully they do. What I can say has happened, because I've checked my email while we've been talking, is UPS has been named as an air carrier for delivery drones. And apparently, this is a big step forward in safety, integrating unmanned aircraft systems into our airspace, expanding access to healthcare in North Carolina, and building on the success of the National UAS Integration Pilot Program to maintain, I tell you, American leadership in unmanned aviation. So that has happened whilst we've been speaking.
No, it happened before. It's on my list of things to talk about, actually.
Was it?
On today, yeah, you're just a bit slow off the mark, Gary.
Can't I don't. So my dear friend Elaine sent me the press release how many minutes ago? Like 5 minutes ago.
Yeah,
Elaine. Oh, Elaine.
But it does it's basically an unlimited license to print and fly drones by the look of it. I mean, they can do what they like, when they like, you know, because it's, you know, American flag, all that sort of stuff. And of course, it speaks to the commercial interests in that sub 400 area. So I think this is a pretty big step, this announcement, because it does really cement the fact that a lot of companies see this as, we know it's not as valuable as they say it's going to be, but they see it as being valuable, and so they need to, you know, make the moves they make.
Well, you know, Jonty's gone now, but we're talking about where real stuff is delivered, and it really is saving lives, not some odd little thing from somewhere to somewhere.
What I want to know, Gary, is when we're going to start building this sub 4 kilo drone to compete in the commercial surveying industry, because, you know, we talked about this a few times now, but we've got Adam. I don't know who Adam is, but I'm sure
Skydio.
Adam.
We are not worthy. Now, Adam, we have taken your new announcement apart. We've decided it was rubbish. Best you defend it. Thank you very, very much for joining us, Adam from Skydio. We are all, but let's not whatever we do, don't let him know we're quite excited about this. Let him think we think it's rubbish. Congratulations on your new products. And well, chaps, ask Adam questions.
You must have had a busy day, Adam, to say the least.
Yeah, it's a busy day here at Skydio. We're super excited. It's a very dangerous situation showing up when you guys have been talking about us, and I don't know what you said.
Yeah, you're exactly right there. Well, I think we were wondering about the weight. You didn't go for the magic 250 grams. I think we're wondering what's on it that wasn't on number one.
Yeah, so it's really a very different product from R1. We've learned a huge amount in the development of R1. We learned a ton from our customers. We had a ton of inbound interest in the commercial, industrial, security space, and a lot of those learnings have translated into Skydio 2. So on the surface of it, at a high level, R1 was basically a proof point of what you could do with computer vision-based autonomy. And it was a very narrow product. In fact, it could really just do one thing when we launched it. Whereas Skydio 2 is like even more advanced autonomy plus more of the standard drone stuff, like much better camera, long-range wireless, longer flight time, more compact, portable, all this stuff. So there's a lot of different aspects of the hardware and technology that make that possible. But that's kind of the high-level view of the product.
Is my first question on this is are we going to see this in the EU? Because I've noticed that the spec is there's no mention of CE and FCC or anything like that. There are a few of us over the pond that would be really interested in getting our hands. So can the European guys expect to see this at some point?
Yeah, for sure. So R1 was only ever intended to be North America only. We didn't, in the design phase, we didn't do the things, there's slight differences in certifications, things like that. With Skydio 2, we have. So our official answer to that is 2020, and we fielded a ton of questions this morning, which may motivate us to try to accelerate that. But it is something that we will do as fast as we can.
It's on the roadmap, which is good. Yeah. It's interesting looking over it. Funny enough, you used the same words similar to what I said. This feels like a very finished product compared to the last one. It was much more proof of concept, test bed, showing what it's capable of doing. I noticed the remote controller is made by Parrot. Do you guys have any tie-in there, or is it simply that fits for you guys what you're going to use?
Yes, we have a partnership with Parrot on the controller. So it's the Parrot hardware. And then we're putting our software on it to make it compatible with our drone. So we're excited to be working with them on that. We do want to make clear that it's not, because the software is completely different, it's not compatible with a Parrot drone, which is why we put our Skydio logo on it, just so that people don't get confused and expect it to work in a situation where it wouldn't. But we basically decided we're still a very small startup for the complexity of the product that we're trying to build, and we focused our energy and the resources on the things that we think we can do uniquely different and better from other stuff out there. And the controller is kind of a table stakes thing where there's a lot of people making good similar stuff, and we wanted to leverage something that was kind of existing and proven.
So is the reason behind that sort of more the communication protocol that it's using, and the complexity and sort of maturity of the range that it can produce? Because I know DJI have got a very, very good system which can do sort of 3 to 5 kilometers, and Parrot are pretty much the only guys on the market at the moment who are able to sort of compete with that. Is that kind of your thinking behind that?
Yeah, I mean, so the wireless technology that we're using on the drone and in the Parrot controller and in our beacon, which is that's an accessory that we developed ourselves, which is unique to Skydio. The wireless technology is primarily software defined, and it's common across all of those. And it's much longer range than you get from just standard Wi-Fi system. So the spec that we're marketing is 3.5 kilometers. We in some situations you can get beyond that, but obviously these things are all very environment dependent.
It's interesting. The beacon is something because the only other company to do this has been Unique. Unique did the wand type of thing on the H a long time ago, really now, and it's something I kept talking. You're sorry, Bruce?
we get the Lily drone.
Oh, well. sorry.
Yeah.
But what sensors are on board that? You know, is it got GPS, Barrow? Is it feeding all of that information back from the pilot? You know, from what the pilot's doing?
Yeah. So it carries a GPS, a Barrow, an IMU, and a couple of other things. And I think, I mean, you've seen everything in the industry over the last 5 or 6 years. I think a lot of these things, it's fascinating how this goes. The concept is pretty easy to imagine. It'd be like, oh, it'd be great if we had this simple, nice, intuitive device to point to where you want the drone to go. But making these things work in a reliable, intuitive way is incredibly challenging. And I would argue the beacon is the kind of thing that, you know, you could make something like that, but it doesn't really make sense unless you have a fully autonomous drone that can see in every direction and is guaranteed to not run into stuff. Because that's really that's the baseline in our view to have a trustworthy experience with an accessory like that. And it really is a phenomenal experience, like being able to point to where you want it to go, get different access, get access to different skills, which is the tap of a button. It's pretty fun. And if you've seen some of the videos we put out today, like you can go through a tree tunnel and it'll basically like stay with you even when it can't see you, and then you pop out the other side and it's right there. And one of the trickiest parts of it really is the interplay between the visual tracking and the GPS tracking. So it's doing a bunch of work to know how much confidence it should place on the vision system, how much confidence it should place on the GPS system, and blending those two things when you're flying with the beacon.
Yeah, because you don't want it to swing from one to the other, do you? Because it's gonna give undesirable behavior if it was to suddenly jump from GPS to tracking and vice versa. Yeah, it's having that blended transition when you do lose tracking to be able to then follow the GPS through and then pick the tracking back up on the other side.
Yeah, exactly.
So just to let you know where my position is, I've already put you in the top 3 small drone companies in the world. So
you creep, whatever.
I'm now going to ask you some difficult questions. So I thought I'd get that out there. I put you amongst DJI and Parrot, and I said DJI, Parrot, and Skydio are the top 3 at the moment. So I'll put that out there before I start the next sentence.
All right.
But what my question would be is, where do you see this going in terms of photogrammetry? Because clearly what you're doing is building up a 3D representation of your environment.
Yeah.
And that kind of lends itself quite well to the automated photogrammetry of 3D assets. And at the moment, a lot of that work is being done manually. So you've got automated mapping, essentially, where people will fly over an area and map it and produce either a topographical survey or a map of their environment. But in terms of 3D modeling of assets, that's really difficult. And at the moment, people are doing that manually. They're flying the drone and capturing photos, clicking the button and capturing photos as they go. Yeah. So how do you see Skydio transforming into that industry?
Yeah, that's a great question. That wasn't a hardball question. That's right in our wheelhouse. So I mean, I'd first start with just, you know, our very high level view of the industry and the products as they exist today. I think that more than most folks out there, I still believe we're really, really early in this stuff. You know, we're in like the first at bat of the first inning of the drone industry, and there's just so much room in every direction to make these products better. And we started Skydio because we believed autonomy was a big part of that. And if you look at the way the market works today, I think that we're at this really interesting and I think exciting point where people have basically proven the value that they can get from drones in a lot of different use cases. Like people have proven that if they fly it around manually and they do the right stuff, as you're alluding, you know, you can get this interesting data, you can build up these useful 3D maps. And there's all these kinds of like very complex workflows that people have started to establish to make this stuff work. And I think that autonomy has a huge say in making those super easy and super scalable. And photogrammetry, I think, is one of them. You're right. Like we have a ton of visual data on board the drone that informs, you can respond to that data in real time. So it knows how far it is away from everything. It has a sense of the kind of structure that it's around. It can use that to plan paths to get exactly the right kind of imagery that you need to do really excellent 3D reconstruction. So I said this in a post that I put out this morning, but we're announcing our partnership with Drone Deploy today. So Skydio 2 will work with the Drone Deploy app. So you'll be able to do kind of the standard mapping missions supported in their app, which we're very excited about. But you can do it with a lot more confidence in more challenging environments. you don't have to worry about the, the typical thing if you go to a construction site and you want to do a drone mapping mission is you try to guess how tall the crane is and then set your height to be above that, right? And that's kind of a primitive workflow. So with a Skydio drone, you don't have to do that, but there's a lot more we can do there, and we'll have a lot more to say over that over the next few months. We have commercial partners that we're excited to be working with, where we've built some really sophisticated stuff to enable kind of custom inspection mapping workflows.
So is your kind of focus at the moment on recreational, or are you already looking at commercial applications for this technology?
Yeah, we're very much looking at commercial applications. We believed when we started Skydio, and I think a lot of what's happened in the market over the last 5 or 6 years has borne this out, that the consumer devices are going to be the most interesting, most powerful tools out there. And basically there's a shared set of requirements across a bunch of different applications where you want something that's light and safe to use and has a really good camera on it. And we believe like a foundation should be not running into stuff, being able to fly without GPS, these kinds of autonomy capabilities. But the core technology there generalizes for a lot of different stuff. So we're obviously excited about the consumer device and what people can do with the consumer feature set, but we know that same hardware, that same core software can be used for a lot of different stuff. And this is something we've been working on a huge amount behind the scenes for the last 9 months or so. And drone deploy is one example of that, but you'll start to see more examples over the next few months.
So based on that, could we see a Skydio in the future that maybe has a slightly better camera that might be better suited to photogrammetry applications?
So the first thing I would say is that the camera that's on there is actually pretty extraordinary. Like the team has done a remarkable job on it, on every aspect. With R1, we mostly outsourced the development of the camera. With Skydio 2, we've done a lot more of it in-house. And we posted a benchmark on our website, but we've compared to basically every other drone out there, including ones that are significantly more expensive in a bunch of different image quality benchmarks. And it does really, really well. So we posted some footage today. We'll get more of it out there. Ultimately, customers using it will be the ultimate test, but we know that the camera that's in there is good enough for a lot of applications. And the other thing is with the autonomy system, you can fly way closer. So if you want really outrageous, like ground sampling distances, you can get a meter or two away from something and get the data that you need. So Skydio 2, as it exists today, we know is a really useful tool for a lot of these applications. And having said that, like everybody else, we have a roadmap of stuff that we're working on, and for different use cases, you may want like a particular payload. Maybe you want to do thermal sensing, and this is all stuff that we're paying attention to.
So how close are we to being able to click on a building and say 3D model this building and give us a photogrammetry output on this?
Stay tuned.
and what about if I owned 4 or 5 of them and said, "Hey lads, lads or ladies, whichever way I want to call them, why don't the 4 of you go off and map that building?"
I'll just say the same thing again.
Oh, okay.
I mean, look, I think that this is the thing with drones. There's all these really exciting concepts out there where you can, it's easy to imagine having a drone do this or that, or having multiple drones do this or that. The multi-drone stuff I think is really interesting and exciting. The foundation for that, the starting point for that has to be making one work really well, right? Like if you can't get one to do the task in a fully autonomous way, then adding more drones to the mix is going to give you more problems, not fewer. So
but you are still the only people in your space, I think I'm right in saying. No one else is bothering to go down this road. So is everyone else wrong, or are you wrong?
Look, I think we should have a lot more competition than we do. I think that there should be, I think other people, there should be other companies, there should be other startups doing this. I think bigger companies should be investing more heavily in it. But we'll see. I think that it's hard for me to imagine a future where drone intelligence and software defined behavior aren't the defining aspects of these products and what people do with them and how they use them. I think that it's really, my view is that that's going to be, if you look back over the the sort of technology bumps that have essentially gotten us from RC toys to where we are now. There's been a couple of, like, going from gas propulsion to electric propulsion was a big one, right? Then getting MEMS IMUs in there so that you could get a little bit of stabilization and control, then GPS, then putting a camera on there. I think intelligence is the next major, onboard intelligence is the next major evolution that, every one of those things was sort of a step change in the utility of these vehicles. And I think intelligence is going to be the biggest one. And it's going to be the one that turns it into a computing platform where we think of them more like phones and laptops and tablets, rather than these sort of these manual gadgets.
So just to give you a difficult question, the likes of Emercent, I don't know if you know Emercent. They do, I think it's Emercent. I can't remember the name, but they basically have a drone with a LiDAR scanner on it. Mm-hmm. And it basically does SLAM, and it basically recreates its environment using LiDAR sensors. Mm-hmm. What made you decide to use vision-based systems to recreate your environment rather than laser sensors? And do you think that your approach of using vision sensors is the best approach, and why?
Yeah. So I'm 100% certain that vision is the right approach, and I'll tell you why. So, like, my co-founders and I have worked with a bunch of different technologies. So before starting Skydio, we met as grad students at MIT in a lab that was doing a bunch of autonomous flight stuff. Our lab was really on the forefront of this research, like 10 or 12 years ago, winning a bunch of competitions for autonomous flight we called them micro air vehicles, not drones at the time, but they were basically the same thing. They were quadcopters. And we used cameras and lasers and sonar and radar and every kind of sensor out there. But there's just nothing that is on the same sort of price performance curve as cameras. And there's a couple of different angles to it. Like, one, just from a cost and weight standpoint, which are major drivers for the performance of these vehicles, you're never going to beat a passive piece of silicon that just takes in photons and outputs electrons. Like a LiDAR system, a radar system is always going to be much heavier, much more power hungry, which is going to drive up the size, weight, and cost of the vehicle, which is going to make it more dangerous, more friction in using it. So that's kind of one angle on it. But then the other is that the data that you get from cameras is actually much better. Like, a LiDAR is very good at giving you just point ranges on where things are, but visual information is incredibly rich. Like, we know this intuitively because it's how we sense the world, but everything you want to know about the environment you're in is available through vision. And with the advances in deep learning over the last 5 years, extracting that information is getting easier and easier. So I think the trajectory of both those curves, in my view, really strongly supports vision as the right tool. And, you know, I'm not familiar with the product that you're referring to, but without knowing anything about it, I can say with basically 100% confidence that thing is going to be a much larger, much heavier, much more expensive drone than Skydio 2, probably by, an order of magnitude or so. And I think that's a pretty direct heads-up comparison between the two different technologies.
Definitely, I think that's pretty much a textbook response there. So I think you've done well. But I do also have to say that I think lasers do have a place, and I think where Emerson, I think, are targeting their resources in underground mines, where light conditions are prohibitive. So where you've got a situation where you can't actually see your environment, obviously you have to use active sensors to be able to see that. And so that's where cameras probably have their shortfall. But in most situations where you're outside, actually cameras, as you say, have a much more rich set of data to be able to work from.
That's true. But there's also there's nothing that stops you with pairing active illumination with a camera system. Like, you can put visible or IR active illumination on a drone and pair that with a visual camera system and get a very similar effect. It's still like a lower size, weight, and cost.
How does it work in low light? What's the performance? Obviously, there's going to be an effect on the avoidance and all of that. At the end of the day, miracles can't happen. But from a normal aircraft behavior, is the sensing part of the stability of the aircraft? Does it use that to be able to help it, like visual positioning system or anything like that?
Yeah, so it is, Skydio 2 is dependent on external visible light in order to function. So the the lower the light, the worse the sensing is. And we've set a threshold in the software for the consumer version, at least, below which it just won't let you fly, which is a limitation of the product. But the other thing is that the major use case for these things is taking pictures and video, right? So if there's not enough light to take interesting pictures and video, there's not nearly as much of a reason to fly. For some commercial use cases and some public safety use cases, there are situations where somebody would want to be able to fly at night without the autonomy functionality. And that's something that for our enterprise customers, we enable. So we'll have an enterprise package available with a few software knobs twiddled like that for sort of the really high-end pro users that have specialized functionality that they want to get.
So from the consumer point of view, you're just locking it down and saying, like, we don't feel this is safe to move forward, so you're not going to be doing night flights or anything like that. Okay.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. Overall, someone asked, actually, is it Rabat? And it was quite an interesting question. The dimensional precision of the vision-based system, how accurate is this around itself?
So one of the interesting things about these autonomy systems is that it's kind of a difficult thing to quantify, and we haven't. I think part of it is like the industry for cars and drones and all of us, like we haven't really developed a specification language, but also it's unclear exactly what the right specifications are. So there's a few different ways we can get a handle on it. So the cameras that we're using, the navigation cameras for Skydio 2, are 4K cameras. They're actually full 4K sensors, and there's 6 of them all over the vehicle. So it's a huge amount of visual data that's coming in. In terms of like the intermediate 3D representations that get built of the environment around it, they're basically range dependent. And this is one of the nice properties of vision, is that the accuracy scales with how close it is. So the closer you get to the thing, the more accurately you can measure it. And we're generally talking like pretty like centimeter level estimates of the 3D world around you and of the motion of the drone itself. And that can get even tighter the closer you get to your surroundings. So it's a very, very accurate system. And that has a bunch of consequences, one of which is that it just, in any flying scenario, it moves with a lot more sort of precision and smoothness than most other drones do, because it has such a precise estimate of where it is and how it's moving relative to the stuff around it.
Interesting. One last thing on the sensors. Are these camera sensors normal sensors? Could these take images? I'm intrigued from a 3D image point of view, what else this thing could do, if you know what I mean. Just sitting in my house vertically, Yeah.
It's kind of, you could think of it like 3 flying 360 cameras, right? Like it's seeing in every direction at 4K. So right now we're using that just for visual navigation. On our website, there's kind of a tech visualization we put together where we show like a 360 point cloud, and we show some of the 360 videos. So, when in development, we're logging all that stuff, and you can create these really amazing visualizations. I think a lot of those are going to be useful for some of the inspection mapping type use cases. And this is one of the things I'm alluding to when I say stay tuned, because there's a lot of unique things you can do there.
But how much memory has it got on board? Because it must be every second, it must be generating lots and lots of SD cards.
Yeah. It is. It's gigabytes a minute when everything's running full bore. So it's not part of the normal consumer experience. We have a separate logging SD card that we use for development that's not in there when consumers are flying it. We basically just have like a flight data recorder kind of thing, like a very small set of things that we log when it's in customers' hands, such that if they want to, it's totally opt-in. But if they want to, they can send that data back to us. Like if they're having an issue with the product and they want to talk to customer support, like that's one of the useful debugging steps for us.
Because it must only be looking at, I don't know, five seconds behind them or something like that, so that if it turns to not turn around and hit something because you went past it 5 seconds ago, you can only have a limited number of seconds worth of memory on there, surely.
Well, so it's mostly spatial. So it's not as much time based as it is spatially based. So if you're staying in the same area for a long period of time, it'll continue to aggregate and build up data and refine its estimate of that part of the world. If you start moving, it tends to forget things that it hasn't it hasn't seen in a while. But it's actually, the raw data is pretty rich, like storing all these raw camera images. But there's a lot of, in the autonomy pipeline, there's a lot of intermediate pieces that are much more compact and easily storable. So it's a totally feasible thing for us to store a pretty extensive map that sort of summarizes all the image data we've gotten over an entire flight.
So I've got a couple of questions. One is a nice question, one's a horrible question. The first one is technical, so I'm sure you'll enjoy that one. And the second one is to do with regulation, which you probably won't enjoy as much. But the first one is, so when you're doing SLAM, essentially, you're doing visual SLAM of your environment. One of the big problems with SLAM is being able to close the loop. So where you're flying around a building, for instance, being able to match up the data from the beginning of a flight and then going round the building and then getting back to that original point. How does the aircraft be able to join that up so it's knowing it's at the same point? So that's the first question. And the second question is, given the fact that we're now currently having to fly within visual line of sight, how does that affect the operation of your aircraft? Because although you've got the ability to be able to fly autonomously around an environment, how does that restrict operators from being able to fly your aircraft and get the full potential out of it?
Yeah, so to the first question, there's a lot of different words you can use, but like the SLAM or inertial visual navigation system that we're using has a very, very low drift rate. So you'd have to travel like a very long distance before you notice that you weren't sort of lined up if you came back to the same place. And for the normal user experience, when somebody's flying this thing around, that actually isn't a key thing. So the version of the software that we're shipping now doesn't do any loop closure type operations, but it is something that is super useful for some things. So it's something that we've thought about and we've worked on, and for some of the commercial stuff is something that we will do. But there's
so essentially, are you saying it's sort of kind of got a short history? It's not looking too far back in history to be able to try and use that data for its current situation. It's only got a very short period of history in which it's locating itself.
Yeah, I mean, it's more spatially based, so it's more based on like how far it's moved, not how much time has passed. But it's local. It's not like a globally consistent map that it's building, because it doesn't need to be for most tasks. Like where you would need that is if you want to fly repeated missions in the same environment, or if you want to fly a task that involves, somehow repeating the same motion over and over again over a large distance scale. And there are some things like that. And I think that's a useful technology for those kinds of things. So it's something that we're thinking about and working on, but it's not part of the software that's out there now, because it's really not needed for most use cases. So then the second question was regulation beyond visual line of sight. I mean, my view on this is that the regulation that exists today is not entirely unreasonable given status quo technology, but I think that there are reasons to be optimistic as autonomy technology becomes more robust and more trusted and more widespread, that regulations will start to reflect that. So you can fly our product line of sight as you would anything else. I think we can make a pretty compelling case that our system is actually better than an expert pilot in most scenarios, and most people who fly drones aren't expert pilots. So I think there's a pretty strong database safety case to be made that the autonomy system that we've built should be treated, should be viewed that way in the relevant regulations. And I don't think that's going to happen overnight, but it's something that we pay attention to. And I think on a long time scale, I'm relatively optimistic about.
Have you got geofencing in this unit? Is it geofenced?
It is not. We of course encourage our customers to use it responsibly. There's a bunch of good apps that you can use to check the status on the airspace that you're in. but it's not something that we're locking down like that out of the gate.
Question, interesting, is further into that. Now you've been quite brave on your warranty statement, which I've noticed. I'm intrigued a little bit because you've used the words "fly it like we ask you to, and we'll cover you pretty much for whatever happens." Is that sort of what you guys are saying on that?
Yeah, that's basically it in a nutshell. We're confident that the mapping obstacle avoidance autonomy system we've built is way better than anything else out there. And we wanted to offer a warranty that backs that up. So we have safety and operating guidelines that lay out sort of, safe, sane operating conditions. But if people are flying within that, and something goes wrong, we'll stand behind it.
Are those guidelines up now? I was trying to find them earlier, but I couldn't. I was intrigued as I read the terms and conditions, but I couldn't find the guidelines.
It's a good. If they're not up now, they will be very soon in the frequently asked questions, because that's something like we've obviously thought a bit about this and we have those drafted. We just didn't have them up on the site this morning, but if they're not there now, they will be soon.
I'm guessing then there's certainly no hidden. You guys are quite bold in what you're saying with that, because look, what goes up might come down. We all know this. Like the
things that we never say the system is uncrashable, right? Because if you put your mind to it, like if you're determined, there's always a way. And so we don't want to encourage people to do everything they can to try to crash it. But in sort of reasonable conditions, in wind, daylight. The trickiest one is like when you get into really thin structures. Like if it just can't see it, there's nothing it can do. So if you're flying around like a clothesline or something, and it can't see it, then there's nothing it can do about it.
Would it pick up a power cable? The bigger cables?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if I was a downhill mountain biker and I was doing biking through a forest, for example, because I think I've seen that on one or two of your videos.
Yeah.
Would I, if the drone was following me through that course, would that be covered?
Yeah.
It's impressive.
There you go.
Fair play to you. I mean, unfortunately, you see, the trouble is we really want to lay into you, but sadly, we quite often hold up the Skydio product as being one of our favorites. So that's a bit of an issue. It's a bit of an issue, really. We should be laying into you. Now, it's made in America, isn't it? It's completely made in America. And you've stood up this American Drone Alliance or something like this. I can't remember what it's called.
Yeah,
we're sort of superhero defenders of the earth thing.
We're working with a few other U.S. drone companies on some policy stuff.
That was a good short answer. So what do you think the time? So you don't have a conventional autopilot on board, do you? So is your product? Here's the nasty question: is it ITAR compliant? Or is it ITAR?
It's not ITAR restricted.
No.
Well, hey, that's good news for you.
Yeah, we've been careful and diligent about that. Well, look, I didn't mean to go super short on the last question. I think that I mean, this is like, you guys are in the middle of this. I think you've probably written and talked about it quite a bit. Like I think there's a fairly unhealthy dynamic in the industry right now on a couple of different angles. I think one, DJI has been super, super dominant and incredibly aggressive in a way that both on the supply side, like people that want to make drone components or drone accessories or participate in the ecosystem, and then on the demand side, people that want to use drones for various things. There just aren't, there's not a lot of alternatives out there, and DJI is fighting very hard to keep it that way in some pretty aggressive ways. And I think that dynamic is not healthy. And then the second one is that there hasn't been a really strong US based drone company, and this narrative has developed that it's just impossible, that the future of drones is all going to come out of Asia and come out of China. And ultimately time will be the test on these things, but I don't think that's the case. I think that there were similar narratives in the past, like in the early 2000s, people thought that smartphones, or people didn't know what a smartphone was going to be, but they thought that Nokia and Samsung had won the phone thing, and that was just kind of it. But what happens over time is that these devices become more about software, and that kind of changes the competitive dynamic. And I think that that's going to happen with drones as well. So we're excited to be building this thing in the U.S. And on the policy front, I think a lot of folks have kind of rightly realized that these things that sort of seemed like consumer toys actually turned out to be the most advanced aerospace devices out there. Like the consumer devices are well ahead of the conventional defense military stuff. And that poses some pretty challenging national security questions. And I do think it's important that, that there's a manufacturing base outside of China for this stuff, especially for the core technology.
So is it fully made in the USA then? Is it, assembled? Is it the boards are laid in the US? Is it,
Yeah, so the answer is no, it's not. There are components that come from all over the world. Yeah. We do all the final assembly and test ourselves. So we get in raw material or sub-assembly components. We put all those together. We do all the testing ourselves. And then we do the logistics and distribution out of our facility. And it is a reality of the world today that when you're working in the sort of consumer electronics component regime, it's almost impossible to not have a global supply chain, which, part of that is China, but it's also Japan and Korea, and a number of other places. So all the major components in the drone are coming from US companies. Some of those components are manufactured in China or Japan or other places. But the key thing, what I would argue the key thing is that the software never leaves our control. Like because we're doing the manufacturing ourselves, we never have to, software never leaves our facilities. And that's where all the IP is. That's where if you're going to put something nefarious in there, that's how you would do it. Yeah. And that's where we maintain the strictest controls.
When are we going to see I want the aeroplane? I think your most impressive video is the aeroplane in the car park. I want the aeroplane. When are we going to have the aeroplane? Yeah. Why did you decide to go multi-rotor rather than the fixed wing route?
Well, look, I think that your quadcopters have a lot going for them in terms of the mechanical simplicity and the maneuverability. But I like where you're going with that. I think that there are, if you want really long flight time, if you want really long range, there's a really obvious answer to that. It's just kind of a hard one to pull off.
But I think the thing you're going to nail for as fixed wing, because I think these quadcopter things are going to die out. They're just a fad. But as regards aircraft, you've got the perfect land for landings. Obviously, I'm very good at landing and would never crash. But no, for autonomous landings, all day it's going to happen with your system. It would be fantastic.
Yeah, look, I agree. I think the technology foundation that we have opens up some new kinds of vehicle morphologies that use lifting devices that will unlock a lot of cool stuff. But I also think that there's a ton of value to be delivered for all kinds of customers and all kinds of use cases with a quadcopter form factor with the right capabilities and the right software. So there's plenty for us to do there in the short term.
But you must also be the guys wanting to make autonomous cars or autonomous rovers. Ian's just making a rover right now. There must be other.
I'd love autonomy. I'd love what that's doing on that. It would
on your rover, yeah.
Yeah, it would be incredible. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that I think it's likely that drones, and this is one of the reasons why we started Skydio and why we're excited about this stuff. I think drones are likely to be the first widely deployed autonomous systems because there's a lot of useful things you can do. You have to solve a lot of the kind of robotics automation challenges, but you don't have to solve all of them. Like the air is basically the same everywhere in the world. So once you teach something to fly somewhere, the chance of it working in other places is quite high in a way that's not the case with ground robots. And then the other thing is, as compared to self-driving cars, the consequences aren't as high. The barrier for iteration and progress is much lower, which I think is a big part of what's enabled us to do what we've done. So, I like imagining the future where it's sort of the opposite of the evolution of other kinds of species, but we start in the air and the technology from the air kind of comes down and works its way into all sorts of other stuff. And I think that's actually a pretty likely thing to happen. But we're very focused now on stuff that flies.
It's really, you're the Tesla of the year right now. The way we're looking at this with this camera. When is this going to be in people's hands?
So we will begin shipping in November. We're we're spooling up our manufacturing line now. We're burning down the last few software issues. So that this is another thing I'm sure you guys have seen. Like the drone space has seen a lot of hype, especially from startups that have had somewhere between like not much and nothing. But
never seen it, never heard of it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that like R1 is evidence of the fact that we can actually build. We can do what we say we're going to do. We can build and ship a real product, and we're a much stronger, bigger team than we were when we launched that. So, we have.
Did that make launching the second one easier or harder? The fact that you were a bigger team.
Definitely easier. I mean, I think that we still took a tremendous amount of risk in development, and a lot of the things that we bit off to make Skydio 2 possible were incredibly risky 18 months ago when we started on them. But we have an incredible group of people here now across hardware, software, manufacturing, logistics, and it's actually been incredibly fun to go through a development process where we now have this strong team. We cover all the different disciplines. We've been through it once together before, so we kind of know how everything works. We have a lot more predictability, and I think that's one of the reasons why the product itself is just so much better in every way. Like literally every axis of it's like better performance, lower cost, more features. Like everything is just way better.
And how far out are you? Sorry, so I'll go with this one, James. Sorry, how far out are you looking at the development of the computers that you'll be using? Are you thinking, what's it going to look like in if you can answer this, in 2 generations' time? So that's what we'll design for.
Yeah,
you wouldn't design for the next generation, surely, because
quite a bit. I mean, I think this is part of the fun of product development. I think especially, I said this before. I think the industry is much earlier than most people realize. Like, there's just so much room in every direction to make these products better, and there's so many supporting technologies that are getting better, which are going to unlock all kinds of new exciting stuff. So this is just the nature of this stuff. Like, we're always looking ahead at what are the sort of coming supporting pieces that we should be building our technology thinking about. And we definitely do that. I mean, everywhere through the software system, we're trying to think 1 or 2 generations ahead and do things that work now but are going to get even better over time as some other supporting pieces come into place. I will say one of the things I'm most excited about there is we're right on the cusp of this wave of silicon breaking that's going to be amazing for embedded deep learning. And it's been talked about quite a bit, but the companies really are going full bore on this now. All the major chip companies are doing it. There's a bunch of startups that are doing it that have, depending on exactly what you want to do, like an order of magnitude or 2 orders of magnitude better performance for embedded deep learning. And all that stuff will accrue directly to all of our software algorithms and just make everything much, much better. So the NVIDIA TX2, which we have in Skydio 2, is, I would say, state of the art today, but there's really much better things coming in a 1 to 2 year time frame, which will unlock some really amazing stuff.
So as someone who's very much interested in the commercial world, with regards to 360 video, can you actually export 360 video to a SD card, for example? Because I think there are a lot of commercial operators. If you could actually export that video as a raw file, there's a lot of commercial operators out there who would be literally lapping up your technology right now. So is that something that you currently offer, or is it something that you're looking at offering?
It's the latter, but we're strongly looking at it. I mean, I basically agree with the question there. And it was something that we were excited about in coming up with the camera architecture that we did. And it's fully within reach of the software. Like, the hardware supports it. So it's just a question of like when and exactly how we want to turn that on from a software standpoint, like what we want the features and experience around it to be.
Well, just as an example, people are currently paying about £30,000 to be able to have this kind of capability. So for a $999 platform, that kind of makes a good business sense to be able to have that kind of capability available to us. So certainly, I think probably put that in the pipeline. But as a second question, I'm sort of obviously part of RPAS, which is the UK Trade Association, but with regards to Skydio, are they currently looking for people to join their team, or is this a company that's recruiting people?
Yeah, I mean, we're
Pick me.
I'm not talking about myself, but we might have a few members who might be interested potentially.
Yeah, we definitely are. I mean, I think that the product that we've built is basically a reflection of the team that made it, and that's like, I think, the most important thing. I mean, that's the thing that I spend most of my time thinking about and working on is building absolutely the best team in the world for this kind of thing. So we have, if you go to, I actually don't know on the new website where it is, but it's not going to be too hard. It's not going to be too distant from our homepage. We have a career section. I'm just going to look this up now so I can properly cite it.
Yeah, it's at the bottom.
Not you, Siri.
Yeah, it's just at the bottom of the page.
Yeah. If you go to
Put the link in the comments, Ian.
Careers.
Yeah.
And in case anyone wants to come and join you, whereabouts are you based?
We're in Redwood City, California. So we're in the San Francisco Bay Area.
So a really horrible place in America. No one would ever want to live there.
No one would ever want to live there now.
I mean, the Bay Area has its pluses and minuses, but I think for building this kind of tech, it's a really awesome place to be. There's amazing people, a lot of good supporting infrastructure.
Do you feel? I mean, this is going to be. Do you feel alone in where? I know I've said it earlier, but do you feel alone in where you are? And it's plainly the right way, because we all think it's a wonderful looking technology and are wondering why no one else is doing it. Do you know?
I don't know. I mean, I think we're excited about where we are. We're excited about the opportunity. We're really excited to get the product out into people's hands. And we're generally very optimistic about the industry and the space. I mean, I think that there's always sort of this wave of pessimism in drones and people not liking regulation and not liking DJI, like being super dominant or whatever. But I think the whole thing is still super early. I think there's a ton of opportunity out there. And we started Skydio because we have a very long-term view on this. Like, my goal is to be doing the same stuff in 20 or 30 years. And I'm excited to think about, if you look at the computer industry over 20 or 30 year timeframes, the kinds of things that are possible. I think with drones, it could be even more spectacular. And I think we have a foundation here to move towards and make a lot of that stuff happen.
It reminds me a lot of Sony. Sony, go back 10 years, Sony entered the camera industry, and they could have copied Nikon, they could have copied Canon and gone down the road, but they didn't. They went their own way, and now look how large they are. And you guys are doing the same thing. You're not doing the same as everyone else. You're going your own path, and that will set you for the future.
Yeah, we hope so. I mean, that's companies are sort of experiments to figure these things out, right? So we'll know more in 5 years or 10 years, like what turns out to be the most useful for the world. But that's what we're trying to do. Create
new markets and own them.
Yeah.
And Adam, just so like the viewers know who you are, what position are you within the company, and
he's a janitor. He just doesn't answer the phone. He's a janitor. Yeah.
So we didn't get much of an introduction there. I apologize for that. So I'm one of the co-founders and I'm the CEO of the company. I come from a technical background. Like I mentioned, my co-founders and I met as grad students at MIT, and then after that we helped start Project Wing, which was Google's drone delivery project. So in the early days, I was quite deep in a lot of the tech and the software. but obviously don't get to do as much of that today. But yeah, get to work with really amazing people across the board who are building the thing.
Janitor then. Yeah. Janitor was right.
Yeah, janitor. Yeah, just janitor. Yeah. It's amazing. We've spoken through to so earlier before you came, we were also talking about Zipline, and we've spoken about you guys, and often the two of you are held up as I'm afraid, right up there in the top two, I suppose, of doing things you're doing. Why didn't you go for a delivery drone then? You said wing, so why did you back away from delivery drones then?
Well, who's to say that we have?
There's the Easter egg.
If only somebody needed some sort of system to stop hitting buildings when it was coming into land. If only we had that sort of system.
I think we kind of felt like the delivery is clearly very useful and valuable in some situations, and that attracted the attention of the biggest tech companies in the world. Amazon and Google started pushing towards it. But I think that the way to get there at scale may not actually be by going straight to building a delivery drone, but by building up the supporting technology, especially the autonomy stuff, in kind of a lower consequence scenario. And I'm obviously very biased on this, but I don't think there's anything else out there in the world that has our level of flying autonomy capabilities. And a lot of those autonomy capabilities are exactly what you would want for a delivery drone. So we know the Zipline folks quite well, and it's tremendous. It's incredible what they've done. It's an incredible company. And I think a big part of their success is they really were brilliant in their strategy of picking use cases where they were delivering a ton of value and where they didn't need to do a lot of the really challenging problems. Navigating like in city streets around trees and power lines and things like that. Whereas, if you want to deliver a burrito to anybody on a street corner, like there's a much more challenging set of stuff to solve. And eventually that's what people want. And I think our technology can be a big part of making that possible. But we still feel like it's a few years away.
Well, it's a pity Jonty had to go to bed. He was here earlier, and I think we'd love to see you at the Africa Drone Challenge on Lake Kivu in Rwanda coming up in the new year. Even if just to fly your things around and wave at people, it would be it'd be very interesting. And of course, Zipline are in Rwanda and doing very, very well there.
Cool.
Yeah,
I'm realizing now I'm almost at a hard stop.
Cool. Yeah, no, we're like an hour and a half over what we normally go here, but it's been an absolute. Thank you so very, very much for joining us. It's very, very kind of you on this big launch day. So we appreciate that greatly. And unfortunately, we are big fanboys of your technology. We should just be saying nasty things, but we're not. So well done you, and we look forward to seeing version 3, and perhaps Ian or Boris Johnson there getting to review one. Those are our duty reviewers for these things.
All right.
If Boris is still in power,
if Boris hasn't been toppled by then.
Yeah, exactly.
We'll send one Boris Johnson UK.
Yeah.
Don't send to Boris Johnson UK. That won't get to me. That'll get weird.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much for having me on.
Well done, guys.
Thank you. Thank you. Well done.
Thanks, Adam.
Cheers, Adam. Bye.
Cheers.
Bye.
Adam.
Bye. We had that was a shock, wasn't it?
That was a bit special, wasn't it?
Yeah. Oh, there we are.
CEO of a company on the launch day. Hold on a minute.
Quite good, isn't it?
The drone. I want the drone on here.
No. Who? One of them did want to come on.
Mr. MPW.
Which one was it? My name's no patrol, but the whole email was about how that Gatwick has been proved it was drones and how evil we all are, how they should come on and tell us about it. I don't think so.
Get them on. I'll bring my clue stick.
Yeah, we were. To be honest, I'd have a lot of fun with that. Come on, that would be fun.
Well, no. I get, you know how bad I get. I'll just get annoyed with people, and that'll be that. I can't be doing that. We can't be doing that. No, they have a great product. I think they have a great product, or they have a great vision, and
well, they're currently number 3 in the world. I would put them on number 3. So you've got DJI, you've got Parrot, and then you've got Skydio.
Look, you just look at it. Everyone who's copied has got nowhere. That's the very simple reality. Go to 3DR, go to all of the companies that have tried to do the same thing, hasn't worked. Doing something different is what's got Parrot to where they are. Let's be honest. The fixed wing aircraft, the Anafi, it's not the same. It is doing it different. And this is another company doing the same. Good luck. They're bringing.
Do you know why there's no one else doing it? Because it's really hard.
Yeah, it's not easy as well.
Yeah, he didn't. I sort of wanted him to say that, but he very modestly didn't, did he?
That is difficult
because if you have the guts to say, well, use this computer, these cameras, and you even put all the specs of exactly what you use in the hardware, but no one else can still do it. I wonder what they're doing. It's obviously the software, isn't it?
Yeah. When Ian and I get ours as influencers, because naturally they'll be sending to influencers. We'll see how scary.
I can't influence anyone.
Bad influence. That's what I'm going for. I thought you were on the wane, you influencers. I thought you were no more. Oh, James, have you started your YouTube channel yet?
Yeah, come on.
No,
James.
not yet. I'm still waiting for Boris Johnson to give me the go ahead. But I've not heard him say the word humbug yet tonight, so
it's interesting. Actually,
waiting for that one.
It's interesting. There were some comments I've noticed from a lot of the FPV crowd. One of the comments I read tonight from someone who's got quite a nice channel actually, and his word no one wants them to do nice big long videos. They want ads now. They want 6 or 7 5-minute videos. Just happen to be using the product. They don't want the big. You've spent a month putting this together and putting it out. So as Bruce said, influences are changing. Someone annoyed me in the week. You might have seen a tweet from me on that because someone pissed me off, frankly, and accused me of doing what I do for my own benefit and no one else's, and it annoyed me a little bit, so I reacted. And as I said before, I said it to Bruce, we said, none of us do this for the money, all the free gear or anything. It's money. Yeah.
Here's a challenge. If you get more than 1,000 likes on this video, Gary, I will start a YouTube channel. If you get more than 1,000
be very
likes.
careful.
Well, you got 10 years. James. You got 10 years of waiting there. Then
I did pick a number that was in my advantage there, but 1,000 likes, and if 1,000 people do that just to piss me off, then I might.
I'll pay him. I might pay him.
I said it wouldn't take long to find that many people that don't like him, would it? It wouldn't take as long at all. No.
How many are we up to already? Where are we?
Yeah. I see in the comments, which I always forget there, James, you mentioned the catapult points to share airspace between drones and traditional aircraft thing that came out. Was it yesterday? I think. If you read SUS News, James, you'd seen that was there yesterday. But anyway, yeah, that looked like a very well.
I got it from your website, Gary.
Yeah, of course you did. Yeah. But it looked like a very balanced, sort of a thing. I thought. Did you other guys have a look at that? Of course you did, because of course you read the news.
Probably about 6 or 7 months old, but it's officially now it's new. So yeah, there's been a lot of work going on in Connected Places Catapult. And they've just started their second. There's a second contract that has come in. I think this is basically the results of the first contract that was initiated. And there's quite a few good players in there. You've got Nats, you've got Altitude Angel. I think Boeing or one of the other big airliners are in there as well, and Cranfield University. So they're all coming together. They're trying to come up with what we'd call UTM core, which is the central component of what UTM needs to be. what do we need as a community to bring all of this together, and to be able to create the UTM infrastructure of the future. This is what CPC have published, and it's looking quite interesting actually. There's a lot of really good information in there. A lot of the slides talk about how this kind of information and infrastructure is going to come together. So let's wait and see what happens. But the second round of that is now coming into place. So Connected Places Catapult put out a tender about 2 or 3 months ago, and that's been won now. So we've now got the second stage of the project that's going out, and that's going to build upon this output, which is recently published by the Connected Places Catapult. So let's wait and see.
It makes for some interesting reading. It has a touch of common sense in there, which, as we know, won't work in this industry. But other than that, no, it does. It makes for good reading.
But it's silly. It's like, as I said in my second to last video I did, no one would think of building a traffic management system that integrated pedestrians into freeway or motorway traffic, because it's a stupid thing to do. The secret is to keep the pedestrians on the footpath or sidewalk and keep the cars on the freeway and the motorway. Then you don't need all this fancy management stuff. It's a really simple thing to do. It's very low cost, and it's proven over many years to be incredibly effective. So why aren't we just doing the vertical stratification?
You should be a consultant, Boris. You would make thousands of pounds being a consultant in this area. You should give it a go.
Funny enough, in an article I've just written for the Lake Kivu African Drone Challenge, whatever it is, I've just said the simple way in Africa to solve this problem is to keep manned aircraft above 1,000 feet. And there's so few of them here that would work, and/or fly at night. Because at night time, most of the airstrips here are unlit and unlicensed, and nobody uses them, and the drone doesn't care when it's delivering in the dark. But I'm not sure that's going to curry any favour. No, again, this industry does not revolve around common sense. Now, look, God, we have gone a long time tonight. This has been 2 hours. It might be our longest ever. 2.5 hours, I think. So what have I missed? What have I missed then, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls?
You missed Bruce Coin. Because Bruce Coin.
Yeah, we did. We haven't had any Bruce chain or Bruce Coin. Just imagine if there was a coin out there which allowed you to share UTM data amongst all the different participants. Oh, there is one. There's one coming out of Australia. There is exactly one that's like that.
There was some interesting stuff though. Did you see that? Using passive radar technologies, they managed to track an F-35 for 90 miles. I think it was in Europe. Yeah. That's the same technology my sense and avoid system is based on, and it shows the viability of that method, even with low reflective targets. Yeah. It's quite interesting. And China, of course, has got their hypersonic missile. I've taken the covers off their hypersonic missile, so we're all in danger.
Did it work? Well,
it doesn't matter.
Okay. Oh, all right.
Because
okay.
If it doesn't work, you ship it back by registered post, and they'll give you a new one.
Yeah, no, they're very good at that, aren't they? They replace any dodgy electronics at all very, very quickly.
My CBM came in faulty.
A real good bang. Yeah.
I see that Stephanie's going to be building a missile down at your place. I thought that's Back to the Future.
Yes, I fear so. Yes.
Yes, something about jet motors or something I read, and rocket motors. That's it. Get more or something like that. But why would you want to build that thing? It would be a horrible thing to fly.
Yeah, like just point to point, isn't it? It's not something you would fly. It would be ballistic more than aerodynamic.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and if it doesn't get going fast enough, there's no way it's going to go straight. But anyway,
it would be like that anyway. So.
Yeah. Well, all right, gentlemen. It's been a very interesting one tonight, hasn't it? I'm going to bid you adieu, and going to bid dear viewers adieu as well. So thank you very much. If you stayed with us for all of that, top marks. Well done. You win some form of a prize. And
please like the video. Like the video.
1,000 times. Yes, get his channel going. We want to see his channel going.
I promise you, if you get 1,000 likes on this video, I'll start up a YouTube channel.
If I get 1,000 likes on this video, I'll find something
I'll
to
get
eat.
1,000 likes on it, don't you worry.
Yeah.
100 views, 1,000 likes.
If you do get 1,000 likes,
10 views would be good. Yeah. I have a feeling James is going to be a little bit disappointed with the world of YouTube when he enters it. I have a feeling it's not quite what he thinks it is.
No, James, it'll ruin your life.
It'll ruin it. Ruin it. Ruin it.
We'll see.
Ian used to live in England. Anyway.
Oh no! Oh no! There's no
easy
need for
now.
that.
And we haven't had time to talk. I did want to talk about that rover because I mean it was interesting that you said you reckon that rovers were hard. I thought they're easy. I've never made one. My brother used to ask cars. It's got to be easy.
No, it's in build. It's over there. It's sitting on the bench.
Yes, there it is. Yes,
it's getting it part built. I'm doing a series of videos on it. I'll probably.
Are you?
Now. Yes, I'm doing a series of videos on it. I've also been playing with this week. Philip's new cube.
That's quite one. Big. That's huge.
The ADS-B.
Oh, there we are. Yeah, it's there, is it?
It's the Rubik's Cube. It's the ADS-B. I'm going to put a video out on that, showing that working. So plenty to do at the moment. Plenty to do.
And Ian, what's your YouTube channel, by the way?
What'd you say, Bruce? Sorry, I didn't.
You're only doing it for money.
And James, quite correctly, he took the words out of my mouth. It reminds us again of your YouTube channel there.
Oh, yes, it's there. Mad RC. It's in the name.
Mad RC. It's all
don't watch it. He's an idiot. He used to be Mr. Hands. You just see these fucking hands moving about.
And yet another demonetization. Thank you very much. Right at the end.
Did try.
1 million points. Well done, gentlemen. All right. Thank you very much. Dear viewers, be safe this weekend, whatever you're doing. If you're going flying, don't crash unless you're Bruce. Well, you always crash. See you again next week, 2100 GMT. Cheers, everyone. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. And now I have to go through a double button.
Button.
See, there's one there and there's one over here.
Oh, you get paid by the one push.